Okay.
Let's see, we last met.
Just a few announcements here. October continues to be Arts Month here in El Cerrito, which is something we can all be very proud of. The Free Folk Festival just happened. Restaurant Week is happening with music at a few of the restaurants throughout our city. And the Contra Costa Civic Theater, I just went to the Allegiance, which is a musical on the internment of Japanese. It sounds kind of an odd mixture to have a musical, but man, that is something very powerful. It's a great show. And the Rotary Club at the Berkeley Country Club on its Sip and Savor did a fundraiser which will assist the Contra Costa Civic Theater, which is a great thing. So Arts Month is incredible here, and go to the website for any further events coming up. Greg Lyman and I met with the new California Public Utilities Commission liaison to the city, and they deal with a lot of important issues in our city, and we're happy to have a liaison that we can talk to, call up and complain or give information to, and they deal specifically with our MCE community choice aggregate issues, and we'll keep a fine tune on that. And finally, I participated in the League of Women Voters and the Contra Costa Votes debate in Martinez some time ago, and it's on the website now, dealing with our charter initiative, our charter Measure V here in El Cerrito, and hoping you can all look at that if there's any other questions. It gives the highlights and the benefits of why we believe why I believe El Cerrito should become a charter city. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, I have a couple of announcements about activities that I participated in. One was today, and it was the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and the speaker was Tracy Young, who's a business engagement manager for Rubicon Programs, and her talk was entitled El Cerrito's Economic Health Needs, a Three-Point Approach. There were a variety of viewpoints on that, and mine was outside of all of that because we had once had a speaker come here that we had hired to tell us their answer to that question, and their answer was a fourth thing. So anyway, I had to leave slightly before it was over, so I don't know if there was any resolution. I doubt it. I think everyone had their own opinion about it, which is just fine, probably. The lunch was prepared by El Mono restaurant in El Cerrito. The other thing I attended was the Senior Resource Fair, which is, I think, getting better every year. It's a really interesting array of booths. It's held at the Senior Center, the Community Center, and it is starts early in the morning and then goes through lunch. There are a lot of people that do come, and I think there are increasing number of organizations represented that provide items or resources or information to seniors. And so it's a really nice event, and it's put on by our Senior Services Department. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Like Councilmember Fideli, I also was able to see Allegiance, and I was so impressed with the performance. And I had the opportunity to go there with my father-in-law, who was actually in an internment camp. So I think it was a special day for our family to see that. And then in addition, I wanted just to give a very brief report on the All Debates Subcommittee. We are still awaiting the health impact assessment that UC Berkeley has performed. It's going to be really groundbreaking. There's not any of this type of assessment that's been done on how hospital closures affect communities. And I will be reporting back on once the final is out, and it is coming soon. Also, I was able to go, we saw a few weeks ago our cheerleaders here from El Cerrito High, and I was able to go out to the junior varsity game and see them perform. And they're really a great squad. I was a cheerleader several years ago, and so it brought back memories. And I want everyone to support our local cheer squad, the El Cerrito High School JV and varsity cheer.
Yeah, my reports are mostly associated with regional activities, so I'll report the Recycle More later, but I do want to build on Councilmember Fideli's report with regards to our meeting with the California Public Utilities Commission. The California Public Utilities Commission does regulate more than just our electricity. They do natural gas, they do transportation. They actually manage some of the transportation, Uber and others. And we did quiz them about natural gas pipelines in our community and whether they're safe or not. So that's one of the things that the CPUC does help regulate. But the CPUC did have a decision on the 11th, last Thursday, with regards to the PCIA, which is the indifference charge. It's the customer indifference charge, which is associated with those that leave PG&E and leave stranded assets behind. And so the decision they made last Thursday was not good for CCAs, in that we will have a higher cost for our PCIA for the next couple of years until PG&E has more of their stranded assets retired. So there is a pretty large PCIA increase in our future. We did have a board retreat. The MCE did have a board retreat, and there has been a technical committee meeting both preceding that decision. And in all cases, the board, the MCE board, is continued to be committed to having our prices be below PG&E. So what it means is that we are actively finding ways to reduce our generation costs so that your cost when you buy your power will still be less than PG&E, even with the PCIA added. So I just want to let you know that, because some of you, I do see some of you in the audience do track this issue and are aware that the PCIA decision did not go in favor of the community choice aggregators. But I can tell you that as a board member, I am committed in making sure that our costs are stable and we remain PG&E and competitive with PG&E, both in PCIA and greenhouse gas emissions, because that is one of the areas where I think I mentioned this about 2 months ago, that as PG&E loses customers, they are reducing the greenhouse emitting greenhouse gas emitter energy contracts, and as a result, they're getting less carbon dioxide discharge. They're getting fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and so MCE is addressing that issue as well. So those are big picture items that I wanted to make sure that our community is aware that MCE, it does align very well with El Cerrito, and I'm doing my best to reflect our beliefs with regards to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and keeping our costs competitive.
Yeah, thank you. On September 18th, I attended the Chamber Luncheon at the Berkeley Country Club, and we had the honor of having our city manager, Scott Hannon. Our staff was there as well. So that was back on the 18th, and I as well attended the opening, actually, of Allegiance. It's very fitting to have that musical, that play here in El Cerrito, where we have a large number of Japanese Americans that were interned. So I got to sit with one of the longtime residents from the Japanese American community in El Cerrito, and it was great to see them after many, many years. On the 24th through the 26th of last month, I was in Baltimore with the city manager, Scott Hannon, and our chief of police, Chief Paul Keith. And we were there to introduce the new city manager president, international city manager, ICMA, and that is Assistant City Manager Karen Pincus. We had staff there as well, so we had a good El Cerrito City Hall there group to see Karen Pincus become president, and she's in London right now. And it was amazing to see. We had a full crowd over there, and so I congratulate our Assistant City Manager, Karen Pincus. On the 27th, I attended the West County Mayor's Association, and we had someone from the county that spoke on modular housing and housing for the poor. And the county is building a housing made out of shipping crates, and they will be put one on top of the other, and it does not look like shipping crates afterwards, and it looks like a very nice apartment building, and they're going to put that right next to the old Richmond Health Center. You can see a huge parking lot by the Target. It's going to be over there. So I'm hoping we can all take a look at that and know that these are fast answers to our need for housing, affordable housing, and housing for the poor. On the 28th, I attended the El Cerrito Sip and Savor. The 28th, I attended the Rotarians, and they had a meet and greet at Los Moles restaurant. On the 4th of October, I attended the Mayor's Conference in Hercules. And on the 5th, I attended the El Cerrito Art Association, and I chose my favorite artwork, and it went to someone, I believe he lives here in El Cerrito. On the 7th, I did attend the El Cerrito Rotary Sip and Savor at the Berkeley Country Club. On the 12th, I attended the West County WCCU SD breakfast at Dijon Middle School. It was great to hear from our superintendent schools what's going on over there, and I'm very happy to tell everyone that they're working on things, and I appreciate the teachers, and they were able to get a raise, and hopefully scores will be better. They're not right now, and I'm hoping that with our new superintendent in schools, our students will get better test scores, and will start to read better and to have better math scores. Also, and today, I attended the chamber luncheon with Councilmember Abelson, where they had a speaker from Rubicon in Richmond. That's my report, and let's go to oral communications from the public.
How about staff?
Staff?
Anything?
Yes.
Okay.
The fire chief, please.
Hi.
Good evening,
Good
Mayor,
evening, Chief.
council members. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Lance Maples. I'm your fire chief. Based on some recent concerns that have come forward here at council meetings, also through fire admin in regards to the Hillside Natural Area, I thought I'd take this evening to give you a brief update of what we've completed thus far in 2018. As you know, the Hillside Natural Area is a true gem for our community. But with that valuable piece of land we have, there's risk with it, and the risk is a wildland interface fire. So our goal every year is to go through and do as much vegetation management as we can within the season, within the time, and within the funding that's available. So this year in April, the fire department worked in conjunction with CAL FIRE, burning slash piles, over 25 slash piles in the Grove area known as Julian Grove or Motorcycle Hill. The slash piles are vegetation that has been removed in the last season from dead down trees, ladder fuels, poison oak, berry vine, non-native species. We transitioned directly from that at the mid-April when we hire our contractors to come in and work in the park. Thus far, we have done 19 different projects within the Hillside Natural Area, mowing flashy fuels, doing roadside clearance, cleaning around the quill system, also working on ladder fuels throughout the groves. It's something we've done throughout the years, and it is very effective in reducing the risk we have to our community. Also this year, we brought CAL FIRE back, and CAL FIRE has been a great asset for the community. They come in at a very low cost. They bring crews to 15 to 20 people in, work along line a couple of our fire captains that supervise the work. This year, they work specifically in the Memorial Grove area, the Ken Smith Grove area, and up the fire trail to the edge of the Kerr property, where they once again worked on ladder fuels, dead and dying brush, saplings, small eucalyptus, non-native Monterey pine, small trees of that nature. Also during this time period thus far, the Public Works Division, through the use of the city arborist, has gone through and identified sick or dying trees within the Hillside Natural Area, and we've removed 21 up until this point. It should be noted that when we work in the park, it's never ending. The seasons come, the seasons go. So at the beginning of every season, we kick off, we have our Hillside Natural Festival, which that's the start of when we can really start to mow and not see a regrowth, and things have to be done twice in one season because the cost is, it starts to outrun what we're capable of doing. This year we've been creative with some volunteer groups. We've had the Friends of Five Creeks come out and pull Scotch broom, do some very effective things that we wouldn't have to do otherwise. In the current period of time right now, Fire Prevention Officer Joe Gagne and Fire Marshal Dave Gibson have met with PG&E to see if they're interested in doing some partnership work along the Mosier easement into the Quarry Hill area there. Our goal is that if we can get them interested to push back into the Hillside Natural Area there on ladder fuels and things that wrap around the Corp Yard and wrap around up to the upper entrance of the Hillside Natural Area, we could really do some good. And PG&E seems like they want to be really helpful right now, so we're happy about that. One main complaint we've received, I'd say multiple times this year, is the fact of illegal fires within the Hillside Natural Area. There's one specific spot, it's right at the top where the trail Y's together if you go in from Memorial Grove. We've had multiple reports there. We've had law enforcement up the patrols there. We've put a camera, motion camera in sight. We just haven't had luck with a 911 call or any pictures taken where we could catch who just doesn't want to play by the rules. That being said, Public Works has recently put new signage in that location, that now there's 4 separate signs, one directly in the middle, and on the 18th of this month, there'll be a fence put around the lower bowl section so folks can't go down and be out of sight and have a fire, and ultimately increase the risk that we have for the community by having a fire this time of year. In closing, as I've always said to council, anything that it comes with emergency services, I'd ask you if you get complaints, emails, or concerns about the quality or quantity of work that we're doing, that you would forward them to Mr. Hannon. He will get them to the right division, and we will work on going in the right direction and move forward. We're more than willing, as a fire department, to go out and do tours of what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I believe some of the council members have taken advantage of that, and some are in the future. I'd appreciate any questions you have or any changes in policy you'd like to see to be forward, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, do you want to talk about the closed session and the need for continuing it?
Can I mention the fire thing now? Can we make
go
a
ahead.
comment about the fire
Sure.
before that?
Yeah.
Is that all right? I mean, thank you, Chief. I mean, I think all of us heard last council meeting the need to be more than proactive, and this city has been proactive, and you've been complimented on your proactivity in cleaning up neighborhoods and responding before the fire. But as you said, it's an every month, every day effort these days, and we have to be on it. And I applaud that. This week, I walked up along the trail, and so I was impressed with the work that's been done. I've seen some good letters from citizens coming in. And I also went to the famous area you were just talking about, and there are 5 signs there, and there's one right in the middle of the, if fire pit. So if anyone can't see those, there's something wrong with that. I took pictures of it too. It's a concentration of signs warning about this. It's good to hear. I think there was something where you guys were pre-positioned this week with the red alert. Can you mention what that means? Because I heard that on the news and thought that was great. You were ready for action before.
Councilmember Fidelli, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Yes, recently in the last adoption of the state budget, Cal Chiefs and Metro Chiefs worked together to have some funding pulled aside and put in OES that's specifically to pre-position resources within communities when there's an increased hazard. This all comes from the reports that came out of the Sonoma fires and the Napa fires that they knew there was going to be red flags. They knew there was going to be a wind event. Everyone prepared, but there wasn't that extra resource. So in the last 3 weeks, we have had pre-positioned resources 3 times in the county. One thing that makes me really happy about that is when they select the resources for the county, they select 5 of a type, and they place them in an area where they feel the need is the highest. These last 3 times they've done it, they've also selected a strike team leader or a task force leader to be in charge of these resources. All 3 times we've been able to make sure one of our battalion chiefs, Fire Marshal Dave Gibson, was able to be assigned to that. So he had the command and control of the 5 extra engines. When we do that, we backfill his position, but just like when we respond on our OES rig, it's fully reimbursed by OES with an administrative fee, and ultimately it adds depth to our organization and all of our neighboring organizations. And it's a great enhanced asset that the state has added this year, and they've absorbed the cost so local government doesn't have to. So it took a lot of work, but a lot of people came to the table and made it happen.
Thanks for taking advantage of that. I've also heard around the community a lot of talk about new volunteer efforts that may be happening with CERT and some of our folks that have been working.
For sure. Our discussions in and around the Hillside Natural area have stemmed a lot of thought about where could we pull in more volunteer efforts. Could we have a larger Earth Day program in the Hillside Natural area where we could get more volunteers involved? Maria Sanders is really interested in trying to grow that program. It's one of the things that will get people more familiar with the park and also see exactly what the city does and what we don't do within the park.
Thank you. And I just want to finish by saying we've been out walking about what it means for El Cerrito to be a charter city. And my view is that in addition to having a reserve for our finances going forward, fire's high on that list of what we can spend and add to if, in fact, on November 6th, it passes in El Cerrito. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. And also, I shouldn't let it go without saying, I also appreciate the concerns. I also appreciate the citizens that do bring to their attention and my attention and the fire department's attention that this is an area we should be focusing on. We live here, and that helps us manage our priorities. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Janet has one follow-up question.
Right. And it has to do with another aspect of what was going on over the weekend in what they call the North County areas. But when I watched it on the news on TV, they kept referring to Contra Costa County. And I know we're not a North County city, or we're not a North County region. So and that has to do with PG&E turning off the power. Do you have any thoughts as it relates to this region?
Well, ultimately, PG&E is, this is another thing that has come out of the North Bay fires, that they knew this was going to happen, and the high-power transmission lines that run through the vegetated area should have been shut off. It's something that has gone on for years down south, especially in the San Diego region. I recently was at a meeting with PG&E, and it was involved with some discussions with this. They really believe if they monitor the weather, study what the forecasts look like, that they will have the ability to forecast where it's going to be the worst and shut those areas down. There's good and bads with that because there's people that need power and communities can't go a long period of time. And a lot of times when they shut lines off in a certain area, just because the way the grid is set up, it's going to shut areas off that are uninvolved. So I believe there's value to it. I will be honest with you. I asked the representative from PG&E, what statistical information can you bring from the southern area that shows they've had effective results from doing this? They didn't have any. They said they'd look into it. But at this point, with the change in climate, the weather we faced, the fire season that seems to go year-round, I think we have to look at alternative strategies for all these things to keep us safer.
And if I can ask another question that relates to that. My next-door neighbor at the time was on some sort of life support equipment that required electricity, and I was told by them that they had a permission as a result of that medical condition that they would be exempt from any turn off of anything.
My understanding is through PG&E and through the representatives that if you have a situation at your house where you have to have electricity, there's a process to let them know, and then they will make sure that that part of the grid is either not altered or they'll come up with another means of electrical support for your home.
So anybody whose family might be in that situation currently could follow that protocol now?
They should contact PG&E directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to mention that we had two closed sessions, our city council here. One was dealing with interviewing for boards and commissions, and the second is dealing with labor negotiations and with our incoming city manager, and we will continue that closed session meeting after this meeting is finished. Let's go to oral communications for the public. All persons wishing to speak should sign up with the city clerk. Remarks are typically limited to 3 minutes per person. I may reduce the time limit per speaker depending on the number of speakers. Kindly state your name and city of residence for the record. Comments regarding non-agenda, presentation, and consent calendar items will be heard first. Comments related to items appearing on the public hearing or policy matter portions of the agenda are taken up at the time the city council deliberates with each action. Here.
Okay, there appear to be 17 speakers
Okay.
under
le-
this.
Okay, let's reduce that to, instead of 3 minutes, 2 minutes each.
The first three speakers are Cordell Hindler, Michael Fisher, and Davis Todd Hunter.
Good evening.
So, good evening, Mayor Quinto, Council. I'm Cordell Hendler, Richmond. And I do apologize for missing the last meeting due to scheduling conflicts. So, that's one. And then, number two, I really want to commend the city manager's office for a wonderful presentation regarding the EC Stars. It was wonderful. I'm sorry I missed that too because it was another schedule I had to deal with. So, that's two. And then the third thing is, I have seen an El Cerrito PD car coming through my area once again. Because one of my neighbors brought this to my attention. She said that she had seen El Cerrito PD car coming through, because I live on 45th and Wall, and she lives on 47th and Wall, and I was like, not again. This is unreal. So I just want to know I don't know, want to get into that, but the last item I want to put in as a future agenda item to invite Ms. Martin to come and speak to you all about the housing, about the micro housing. So that's an idea. So I'm finished. So Michael, it's all yours.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name's Michael Fisher, and I have the honor and privilege to be your library commissioner. As I mentioned when you appointed me, I have promised to update you on various events involving the library. At the last Library Commission meeting, we voted to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the library system eliminate overdue fines, both in the future and retroactively to all existing accounts. Overdue fines adversely affect people of lower income and can drive them away from the library, which is exactly the opposite result that we want. The experience of those libraries that have removed fines is that this action does not significantly affect the return of books. And our neighbor Berkeley started a similar program last July. Charges for lost or damaged books will remain, as will fines under the Link Plus system, as that is not under the control of the library. Finally, there is a Fix-It clinic scheduled for the library on October 27th. This is the second clinic this year and is sponsored by the El Cerrito Progressives, Contra Costa Libraries, and the City of El Cerrito Environmental Quality Committee. This free event invites anyone to come with a broken item and learn how to fix it in a learn and share atmosphere and in a family-friendly format. It is both a great event to watch or participate in and will show, I'm sure, once again, why we need a library with one or more separate meeting rooms so as not to disturb the other patrons. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Davis Todd Hunter. I live in El Cerrito. The City Council has seen fit to send out 2 information mailers on Measure V. The information was already out there. They had had meetings, they had sent out mailers, and the Fair Political Practices Act, I don't know if they will act on it, but we're looking into it, Contra Costa Taxpayers Association. It has been said that it will mainly be paid by, or much of it would be paid by businesses. The fact is that less than 20% will be paid by businesses. My wife died last month. When we got married 36 years ago, we both had adult children and we both had trust. We elected to keep our trust. We didn't form a family trust by merging them. Well, the house is in my wife's trust. I'm going to inherit it directly to me. That's one real property transfer tax. Then I'm going to move it into my trust to protect my children from having to pay, go through probate and all of that. That's a second real property transfer tax. I'm going to be taxed if I don't get it done before this gets enacted into law. I would be taxed over $30,000 for inheriting my own house. Thank you very much. This is a tax measure, Measure V. And if anybody wants to debate me on that, if anyone wants to discuss it in more than 2 minutes, my email address is on the No and V signs. Across the street from the city manager's house, there were 2 No and V signs. Those were both stolen. The Yes on V sign on the city manager's property was not stolen. There have been no Yes on V signs stolen. There have been no on V signs stolen. Thank you. I'm not sure for what.
Christian Teal, Al Miller, and Susan Duncan.
Greetings.
Good evening.
Distinguished members of City Council, City staff, and most importantly, El Cerrito people. I'm talking also about Measure V. I'm a strong opponent of this tax and making El Cerrito a charter city. The tax basically effectively decreases property value. It's, by extension, is going to increase rents. We renters are going to see an increase, and it's pretty much being advertised by taxpayer money with pictures of police and fire and parks and recreation, when we all know the actual funding, the money goes into the general fund. The city is grossly underfunded, which is not a surprise, with $61 million in pension liabilities that have been accrued over the past years, with starting salaries of over $120,000 for, say, a police officer. So you guys are overspending, and now you're trying to grab the money from us, the citizens, and I'm strongly opposed to that. As you know, that any city in California who has ever gone bankrupt was a charter city. Without the checks and balances from Sacramento, I foresee this for El Cerrito, and I really love El Cerrito as my community for the last 10 years, and I don't want this city to be going bankrupt or overspending more. It's time to, tighten the belt and actually not overspend. And I'm strongly against, and I urge any El Cerrito resident to vote against Measure V. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Quinto, council members, and staff. I'm here as president of the El Cerrito Library Foundation, excuse me, to give you an update on the One City, One Book program. You'll remember that the 57 bus was the book chosen by the Kensington Library and El Cerrito Library as the One City, One Book. We've had 3 events related to that so far. Last Tuesday, we met with the author in the library, rather crowded library, to discuss the book, why she wrote it, how she wrote it, and the process that she went through and what she learned about the families. I guess it was Tuesday, we had 2 discussion groups. One was a youth discussion group that went from 5 to 6, and they were discussing it from their point of view. One of the El Cerrito High School teachers had his class there as a class project, and that went very well. The other community discussion group was held afterwards, and it was interesting, different, informative, and a compelling discussion that we had. Next Monday night will be the final event, and it's going to be a writing project. The library staff has structured it so that everybody there will be challenged to express their ideas briefly in writing on the different aspects of the book, and they'll plan to go through and share those. It'll be held at the library again, starting 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Susan Duncan, it's Scott Perry and Nick Galora.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Susan Duncan, King Drive. I am here to speak on the fire hazards in Hillside Natural Area. Since the last council meeting, when a lot of us spoke on this issue, much brush has been cleared in the area below King Court, creating buffer zones to houses and clearing for several feet on either side of the trail that goes into the grove. It's good that it's been done, but as everybody knows, this should have been done quite a while ago without us having to come here to ask for it to be done. However, thanks to the El Cerrito Fire Department, the arborist, and the Public Works for getting this done finally, starting the process. Much is left to do. In the city manager's updated report of October 4th of this year, it is stated that the city is still in the process of brush clearing and that ladder fuel will be removed. I hope this means that some thinning out of the younger, shorter eucalyptus trees and pines in the grove that are a major part of the ladder fuel will be done. We also hope that this will be done soon. It is also stated that 3 hazardous eucalyptus trees were removed. We don't see any evidence of this. We just see evidence of an acacia, a plum, and a pine being removed. Where were these 3 hazardous eucalyptus trees removed from? We have started to organize volunteers from the neighborhood and from CERT to break some of the very deep litter that is close to the path in the grove. I also think that the citizens of El Cerrito, Kensington, Richmond, and Berkeley should start pushing even more and putting pressure on East Bay Regional Parks to greatly reduce the fuel load in Wildcat Canyon. I know there are a few groups already doing this, but the groups should join forces to have a large cohesive push. Can the council and the city start working more with East Bay Regional Parks to get this done also? The fire danger comes from both east and west. And one comment on putting the fence around the fire pit, that's a great idea. Because putting 5 signs up there, I envisioned kids building a fire around the sign. So I think the signs were probably not really effective, but the fence is a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Scott Perry. I'm a lifetime resident of El Cerrito, and I come here tonight in front of the City Council for the very first time. I come because I am extremely concerned about the overgrown vegetation condition of Hillside Nature Area. I'm concerned about the lack of vegetation management and the critical fire hazard as a result of the city's neglect of this condition. There are several reports made in explicit detail addressing the extreme hazard, and although the city recognizes this hazard, the council, past and present fire chiefs, the recommendation of the reports were not adopted. In the meantime, the vegetation grows unabated. The bottom lines of these reports cite the only chance the city has in a Diablo wind conflagration is the prior removal of all ladder fuels and small trees. I would also add the removal of all eucalyptus trees on the face of the quarry as a fire break for wind coming from any direction. Again, this information is known to the city, our mayor, our city manager, this council, current, past, and our next fire chief. The absence of funding for this kind of work in the current budget is a serious and unacceptable oversight and a failure of priorities. The absence of a serious and effective fire fuel mitigation effort is also an oversight and neglect by this council, our mayor, the manager, and fire chief. It is imperative the fuel reduction begin immediately as the entire community is at risk. I would suggest the city contact the California Conservation Corps, as they are very effective and adept in fire fuel mitigation throughout the state. Make this a priority. Reorganize your budget, postpone projects, and follow through on the recommendations of the LSA report, prior fire chiefs, and current statewide fire officials who say, it's not if, but when. The council should know I live in fear and anxiety this time of year. I fear the loss of property, I fear the loss of lives and community because not enough has been done to proactively prevent the propagation of a conflagration. I can live with the events as tragic as they might be if an honest, deliberate, productive, and proactive effort is made to give our community a chance to survive a firestorm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After Nick Galero, it's Robin Mitchell, Howdy Gowdy, and Sherry Drobner.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Nick Galoro. I live in El Cerrito. I volunteer for Tenants Together every week and do a few hours of tenants counseling. I hear some real heartbreaking stories of people having to leave their homes, not knowing where to go, etc. We have about 9,000 people in renter households in El Cerrito. That's a lot of people who have no protection against arbitrary rent increases of whatever amount the landlord owner wants to charge. In El Cerrito, tenants have no legal choices to challenge rent increases. They either have to pay the rent increase or move out. In many cases, the tenants are already paying 50% or more of their income in rent and can't pay the rent increase. Some will end up homeless, living in their cars, tents, or RVs. It's a common story these days. So what do we do? Do we deal with the problem with compassion and empathy by enacting a rent gouging moratorium and just cause eviction ordinance? Or do we say to the 9,000 or so rental household members in El Cerrito, too bad, sorry, if you can't afford to live here, just move somewhere else, farther away from your job, to another state far away from your family and friends, or go live in a car, in a tent, or on the street or in a park. Tough luck, it's not our problem. No, we need to protect these tenants from rent gouging. State law gives the landlord the right to earn a fair return. Isn't that good enough? Also, I just thought of this. Vote yes on Measure V. I don't think cutting wages and salaries just creates a downward spiral of wages and salaries. I don't believe in that. And also vote yes on Measure 10, California Affordable Housing Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Robin Mitchell. I live in El Cerrito. So a couple things. The Allegiance show is incredible, and it ends on this Sunday. I really recommend that anybody that can should go to it. You guys have already talked about it. I also think that what you were saying about fire abatement, it's like if we don't have the money, Measure V is a good way to get some money. So I would advocate for voting on yes on Measure V. But what I really wanted to talk about was affordable housing, and I know you're going to have a session in December to talk about it. And I've been thinking, several of us have been thinking, the non-binding mediation may not be the best way to go just because it's non-binding, and the question is whether you should be spending resources doing something that's not very effective, and other people are going to talk about that. But in the meantime, it seems like we really need to do a rent increase moratorium, and we need to add just cause eviction. And the just cause eviction, I think, needs to happen no matter what path you take, even if you do the non-binding resolution or mediation. So, and I just wanted to, I was looking at the affordable housing strategy today, and under the policies and programs, not even under the 4 pillars, there's a bullet that says to explore, not even talking about stabilization or anything, just good cause for eviction ordinance, vet and adopt a good cause for eviction ordinance that would limit landlords' ability to evict tenants without cause, and then explore, and then part of Pillar B was explore the potential for tenant protection, such as rent stabilization. So that's something that you're already looking at. But the whole thing about the moratorium is, and I guess a lot of cities have done this, but California has an anti-gouging statute, and that was implemented during the Santa Rosa or the North Bay fires because that was deemed an emergency. So it's a price gouging. Price gouging refers to sellers trying to take an unfair advantage of consumers who are in an emergency or disaster by greatly increasing prices for essential consumer goods and services. This statute, which is Penal Code Section 396, prohibits raising the price of many consumer goods and services by more than 10% after an emergency has been declared. And a city, there's lots of people that can declare the emergency: the President of the United States, the governor, or city or county executive officers. So the city can declare an emergency. It can be a natural or a man-made disaster. I assert that our problem with affordable housing could be classified as a man-made disaster. You have the authority to execute this anti-gouging, to implement the anti-gouging statute. So, and I think some other cities have actually used that as part of their rent moratorium. So I think it's something you all should explore. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Howdy Gowdy. I live in El Cerrito. So I hope that you had a chance to read Carol Lamont's letter that was sent to you. That was a letter also about housing and her experience as city staff in both the city of Fremont and the city of East Palo Alto, and different approaches were taken in those two cities. And she very eloquently laid out how she went into the idea of non-binding mediation in Fremont with, good intentions and thinking it was going to work out, and it really proved to be a failure. And then she moved into East Palo Alto and helped them implement their rent control and found very successful outcomes there. So I think it's important for you to look to these experiences in other locations as you consider what to do to protect tenants in El Cerrito. And I really appreciate that the council had a study session in August to explore these topics. And I also appreciate that staff is working really hard to bring something back in a short time frame like December to try to do something productive. However, I am concerned that what is being offered on that short-term package is just not going to be effective. And so I think you need to look at the experience in these other cities where non-binding mediation really hasn't solved the problem. So just doing something to say we're doing something isn't enough. We need to actually study the problem more deeply. I think we need to enact a temporary anti-gouging action to give protection and safe space to the renters while we can have a more robust and deep conversation about enacting something that's really going to be meaningful and make a difference. And so I hope you do that going forward. I'll also say that I support Measure V because I think it's misplaced to say the city is happily overspending. From my experience watching this council over the years, I think you're very prudent and don't share anything in common with cities that have gone bankrupt. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Sherry Drobner, Helen Dicken, Jeff Levin, and Edward Toms.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, City Council members and Mayor. I too am here to talk about the idea of a rent moratorium and just cause for eviction measure to be taken up by the City Council. I brought with me also some papers tonight that I'll distribute to you. They give examples where this has taken place in both Santa Cruz and Alameda. And they're both very different, and I would really, encourage you to look at them carefully. There's include frequently asked questions, and when you read it, you can see how when the officials put this together, they really thought about their community, what works, what wouldn't work. It's not just a cookie cutter example, and I felt like I heard a discussion about that when we had previous meetings and concerns about these things. So I'm hoping that by looking at least these few examples, it might give you some ideas so that you can wrestle with this issue and do so in a way that we don't just move to something that's easy to do or the low-hanging fruit, let's do mediation, when in fact I've been doing research on it so far and I haven't found evidence of success. There's like a story here and there. That's not evidence, that's a story. So, and it costs money. So why not just, be conservative with our resources when we need to be but put renters at give them some reassurance, just like the folks who were here last week or at the last meeting and how concerned they are about the fire and possibility of losing their homes. I really feel for them. And in the same way, I feel for renters who are wondering what's going to happen if their rent is raised. So I'm going to just pass these out to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Jeff Levin, long-term resident of El Cerrito and also policy director with East Bay Housing Organizations. To repeat what we have said at past meetings, we have a housing emergency here in El Cerrito. We have hundreds of renter families paying more than half their incomes for rent. The slightest rent increase is a problem. Increases of $100, $200, $300 are catastrophic. While the city debates the best policy to go forward, whether that is mediation or rent control or something else, and all of those will take time to put in place, tenants remain at risk. We need to do something to help them now. And as other speakers have said, this is not an uncommon thing for other cities to take the quite reasonable and rational step of imposing a temporary moratorium on excessive rent increases coupled with just cause protections, and just put a cap on things for a period of time while we deliberate carefully, based on facts, what the best policy is going forward. But doing nothing is also a decision. And if we make the decision to do nothing, more households will face rent increases and more folks will be forced to leave El Cerrito. So we urge you to declare a housing emergency, put a moratorium in place, and then we can proceed with a debate over the best long-term policy that really suits the conditions in El Cerrito. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Helen Dickey. I live in El Cerrito. I'm here as an informal representative of the older population, those of us living on fixed incomes who are not able to find other. I can't earn more money. At 80, I'm stuck where I am. So this issue of putting a moratorium on rents is particularly important to people in my age group and financial situation. Please don't forget us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I may have pronounced this wrong. Is it Eduardo Thomas? Okay, and Micaiah Akia and Ronnie Polensky.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Eduardo Torres. I'm the Northern California Regional Coordinator for Tenants Together, California's only statewide organization solely dedicated to fighting for tenants' rights. For the last 2 years, I've been working in Concord exclusively. Like many cities across the Bay Area and across the state, renters in that city have been burdened by ruthless rent gouging at the hands of predatory landlords who value profits over people. Over a year ago, the city of Concord finally decided to address the public outcry of skyrocketing rents. However, the city didn't adopt rent control or just cause for eviction ordinance. Instead, they decided to adopt a rent review program. Contrary to popular belief, the rent review program in that city has been a complete failure. In fact, the city is currently wasting about $100,000 per year for a program that is non-binding and heavily favors landlords over tenants. Most recently, 2 tenants living in Sky Property units in Concord received huge rent increases from their landlord. One tenant was given a $450 rent increase and the other a $850 rent increase. In both hearings, the Rent Review Board recommended a far less amount for the rent increase. However, because the program is non-binding, the landlord's lawyers, who was representing Sky Properties, balked at both recommendations and refused to accept the Rent Review Board's recommendation at the end. If you'd like to see for yourself, the rent review program in Concord is it's a huge waste of city funds and a complete failure for the renters living in the city. Both hearings have determinations that are available to the public, and you could find that if you want to do some research. The city of El Cerrito should learn from the mistake that Concord has made. It should really look for real solutions that are proven to help tenants in the city, like exploring programs like rent control and just cause for evictions, and not programs like rent review programs that offer nothing but false hope to tenants there, and it's non-binding. In the meantime, I urge the city to look at adopting a moratorium that would protect tenants living in the city from further rent gouging and evictions. Please don't wait for more families to be displaced in your city. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, City Council member, and staff. My name is Makalia, and I've been living in El Cerrito for the past 30 years, and 24 years just in one place alone. And I'm one of those renters who has had 20% increase every year for the last 3 years, and paying more than 50% of my income. And that is really stressful, and I do not need any more stress. So I am really encouraging and asking the city to take some type of measure, a temporary relief for renters like me until some type of permanent solution is resolved. I'm just repeating of what the others have said. It is very important for the city to keep the residents where we are and not displace us. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Ronnie Polensky, and the last speaker is Mary Jadelli.
Hi, I'm Ronnie Polonsky, and I live in El Cerrito. And I'm so tired of coming up here. I really didn't want to speak tonight, but I thought another voice couldn't hurt. So the first thing I want to say is something really positive. I live catty-cornered to Fairmont Park, and it's looking so good. It's really a pleasure. It looks great. I'm hoping the turtle's coming back. Does anybody know if the turtle's coming back? Oh, good. My granddaughter will be thrilled. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm impressed with the quick response that there was to all those nice homeowners that came in worried about a fire. And they're worried about their lives and they're worried about their homes. The same thing is true for renters. They're worried about their lives and they're worried about their homes. And I would really, really encourage you to make a quick response for those people too who can't speak for themselves. So I was curious about mediation, and I called Echo Housing because they're the ones that have been subcontracted to do the mediation for Alameda County. They don't answer their phone. They have 3 different numbers. They tell you to, if you want to speak to somebody, hit 0 for an operator. I did this 3 or 4 times. I called all the numbers they give. Not one single person answers the phone. So if I had been a renter who was about to be evicted, I would now be living on the street. I feel like if we can afford to pay the kinds of salaries we pay to city employees, which I'm not complaining about, I'm not saying they shouldn't get them, we can certainly afford to get a group of volunteers together who can oversee a rent stabilization program for our city. So I want to reinforce our desire for a moratorium on rent gouging, and I want to say that even if Proposition 10 fails, we still need some kind of, we need a rent control ordinance even more. Its day has come. It's not going to go away. It's going to be an issue that's going to keep coming up and coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Mary Godella. I'm very touched by the stories of the renters in El Cerrito. I didn't realize that that was such a problem, so I urge you to act on their requests. I think they gave you some wonderful ideas. I want to talk about fire abatement. I live on Potrero Avenue, and I live in my backyard. I can see the Wildwood condominiums. I have 5 pine trees. I'm the only person who has 5 pine trees planted by Wildwood that rain pine needles in my backyard. And there's also a parking lot right behind my yard. It gives me a great view of those eucalyptus on the other side. Anyway, many times there are visitors to Wildwood, and they aren't visitors to residents. They're just sometimes, well, I guess all ages go back there. And they just sit in that parking lot, and it's a great view, and I don't mind it. But there's tons of pine needles on the Wildwood side. And so I look at that, and in talking to Sue, I realize my house is 1 cigarette butt away from going up in smoke. They have gardeners that come around once a month. That doesn't do it, because the very next day, there are tons of pine needles. I've actually been cleaning up my own in my yard and putting it in their green bins because they're right there. Then I don't have to walk down the hill and spill them. Also, there are pine needles in my beautiful oak tree, and there are pine needles hanging from my mesh fence. So I'm thinking about it today. I probably have to go clean the pine needles off my fence, because that would really lead to a fire. I'm also wondering if maybe we could get those pine needles cut down, because I don't think they really belong there, and I don't think that they're a native plant, and they are a fire hazard. So I guess my next step is to talk to the fire chief and have him come and talk to somebody at Wildwood. I'd also like to know where I can find out who is president of the homeowners association there, because I called City Hall and I didn't get a call back. I don't know how to address anybody there, and I'd like to talk to the president so that we come to some agreement. It is nerve-wracking to live with lots of pine needles behind you. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more cards.
Thank you. Let's go to adopted the consent calendar. A is minutes, approve the minutes for the meeting of September 17th. Proclamation, Shelter in Place, Education Day. C is records retention schedule. D is conflict of interest code. And E is proclamation, United Against Hate Week.
I'd like to read the proclamation for United Against Hate Week.
Okay.
Just when I read this, I was moved by it, so I think it's worth mentioning and not just passing over. Okay. El Cerrito City Council proclamation designating November 11th, 2018 through November 17th, 2018 as United Against Hate Week. Whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strengths come from its diversity, and whereas the Constitution enshrines equality on all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, political views. Whereas recently federal policies and rhetoric have generated a toxic environment that encourages the propagation of racist, xenophobic, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, and other bigoted views by emboldened hate groups and individuals. And whereas deep divisions within our country allow for the festering of extreme ideology, further strengthening a cycle of mistrust and suspicion fueled by fear, anxiety, and insecurity. And whereas the number of hate crimes across the United States has increased dramatically over the past couple of years, and whereas in 2017, white nationalist groups held violent rallies in cities across the country, instilling fear across many diverse communities, and whereas the city of El Cerrito is deeply committed to inclusivity, and whereas the city of El Cerrito was declared a sanctuary city on March 21st, 2017, further affirming the city's commitment to the values of dignity, inclusivity, and respect for all individuals, regardless of ethnic or national origin, gender identity, race, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, age, disability, or immigration status. And whereas the community launched a Stop Hate Together campaign to further state our shared values and reiterate our commitment to inclusivity, and whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are key to understanding and embracing differences between people, and whereas sponsoring a United Against Hate Week is an important step in bridging divisions and healing our communities. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of El Cerrito that it hereby declares the week of November 11th through November 18th as United Against Hate Week in the City of El Cerrito.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion for adoption of the other items on the consent calendar?
Sure, I'll move the A through, that one was D. I thought it was the whole, I thought it was the whole.
I wasn't sure, so-
Okay, let's assume it was the whole consent calendar.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so let's go to presentation. We're going to have a presentation by East Bay Regional Parks District on Measure FF. I see some familiar faces. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening. Hi. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Lisa Baldinger, and I'm the legislative assistant with the East Bay Regional Park District, and I'm here with our board director, Dee Rosario, to speak to you tonight about Measure FF.
Good.
So on June 5th of 2018, the East Bay Regional Park District Board of Directors voted unanimously to place an extension of a voter-approved funding in Western Alameda and Contra Costa counties on the November 6th ballot. This funding is Measure FF. Measure FF is a no increase in tax rate extension at $1 a month for a single family unit and 69 cents per month for a multifamily unit, which translates to numerous amenities and services throughout the region. Such services include wildfire protection, public safety, increased public access to open space and regional trails, visitor facility improvements such as restrooms and water fountains, and environmental engagement and services for the community. Director Rosario will now expand on those services.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time. If passed, Measure FF will give us about $3.2 million a year, and it'll be split between infrastructure, staffing, and reducing the fuel load in the East Bay Hills. As you know, the wildland urban interface is one of our biggest concerns, and Measure CC has started to address that over the last since 2004, and we desperately need to continue that. And as you know, we have 26 miles of wildland urban interface, so we probably have the largest wildland urban interface of all the other agencies around. And as you know, we're able to, we're really good at, for every dollar we take in, we're able to bring in extra money to about 2 to 1. And so it goes to the continued reduction of the fuel load in the wildland urban interface. And we also got $5.65 million from FEMA, and we've started those projects. There's 5 projects starting now. We're going to be starting 19 next year. And so I heard the fire chief, we would be definitely would entertain working with El Cerrito in those efforts. Coordinating it makes total sense, and I would be advocating for that. The other third is we're bringing on we're doing a lot of infrastructure projects. It's kind of like doing your house, foundation, sewer, electrical, and stuff you can't see. With this Measure FF, we're actually going to be able to bring on a couple of new parks, the Oakland Army Base, and the Alameda Point in Alameda, and continued services here with the Bay Trail. So we're asking for your, is there a question?
Yes. No, finish your request.
Just, we're advocating your, a yes on Measure FF. It's very affordable. It's only $1 a month, $12 a year, and it will continue valuable services to the community.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. Thank you for staying through the public comments, and clearly we have about 3 miles of urban wildlife interface with you that we share with you. I know, I'm not sure if it was just the University of California or University of California with East Bay Regional Park Districts on the eucalyptus tree removal and the joint EIR that you did. Can you educate us a little bit on some of the challenges? I'm not sure I'm going, wait, your staff support is behind you. She's going to back you up. But if you could just give us a few words about the challenges you've faced as an organization around eucalyptus tree removal.
Yeah. So, as you know, it was the 3 agencies applied as a group to FEMA, and UC Berkeley, the City of Oakland, and East Bay Regional Park District. And the UC Berkeley, their money was refused because, number one, they went ahead with their project without approval, and 2, they were clear cutting, which we are not. We're thinning. FEMA came out with a decision that the thinning program was the most effective. City of Oakland was denied their money because they did not have a vegetation management plan. They're currently trying to do one. They probably won't be done for another 2 years. So we've assured Mayor Libby Schaaf that with our share of the money, we would, because the bulk of those FEMA areas were in Oakland. So we're going to be doing our part on our side with that. So we got the bulk of the money, and there's more money available, and there's more money available not only through FEMA but also through the state of California.
Excellent. That's great information to know, and I'm sure that we'll be contacting you and your organization to try and get that information.
Yeah.
Some of the public comments tonight were to pressure you into cleaning up your side of the fence, as they say. Can you speak to, you did touch on it, that is something, I know FF does not specifically go towards that, but maybe some of the other programs you have do?
Well, Measure FF does speak to the wildland urban interface management.
Excellent.
And Measure CC, which is still in force until 2020, does address that. So
you're getting support.
Hi, good evening. In addition to Measure FF, East Bay Regional Park District is aware of that wildland urban interface and how there is that nexus for communication, for education, and for engagement. So we've begun sending mailers and working with the local communities to educating those who live adjacent to our parklands on how they can best minimize the vegetation that's flammable on their own property. Additionally, we brought with us tonight, and it's on the table up at the front, this was published recently in the article, or in a newspaper, and it goes over how we can work together as communities to prevent wildfire. We talk about all of the agencies who are working together, because it's not just us working in the East Bay Hills. We're working with CAL FIRE, we're working with FEMA, and we're working with the City of Oakland, East Bay Mud, and the local communities to really come together to prevent fire.
And Board Member Rosario, I can answer you wholeheartedly that I do support Measure FF. There is no question that East Bay Regional Park District provides a great regional resource, and that this continuation of this tax is the right thing for us to be doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah. I'm very much interested in us being able to work together in the near future, especially if both of our measures pass. We'll have more ability to address these issues. But I was also interested if maybe, because I know a lot of our citizens are very concerned, if you might be able to come back and do another presentation on what's currently being done, like we talked about a little bit, so that people know what is being done, what's not being done, where we need to go, and kind of, instead of just wondering, really letting the community know what's happening right now.
Leading up to this, putting the measure on the ballot, we've been leading groups that requested a tour of some of our fuel break projects and showing them untreated areas versus treated areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Abelson.
Yes, I want to thank you very much for coming, and this is just a curiosity. Do you represent us?
I am in Ward 2. I'm here because I'm the chair of the campaign for Measure FF. Okay. But so I represent Oakland, Piedmont, Lafayette, Moraga, and Rinda.
You're doing a very good job of doing that.
Oh, thank you.
And we appreciate that too, because I think we all think that it's a very important item on our plate.
Yes.
We do have to take care of this, and this particular measure, FF, will help do that. So thank you very much for coming tonight and presenting it.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilmember Fideli.
God bless East Bay Regional Parks. They're wonderful. I just wanted to say I got the postcard this week that you guys are sending out.
Great.
Talking about working together on fire. So thank you for that. It's a beginning, and we have to keep it up again every day, every month, every week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're keeping our fingers crossed for the rest of the month.
Okay.
Until it rains.
Yeah. So, Di Rosario, thank you for being here in El Cerrito. You're welcome to come back here anytime.
Yeah, thank you for
your time. It's great to have you here as well. And know that I believe I'm going to be in the next postcard for Measure FF. So I look forward to getting it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. We support it.
You're welcome.
El Cerrito, they love their parks, Wildcat, Tilden, and Point Isabel especially. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your work.
Thank you. Can I leave these advocacy cards here?
I wanted to find out if we have any public comment on this.
Yes, Mayor. We have one speaker, Cordell Hindler.
So, good evening again, Mayor, Council. Thank you to our East Bay Parks people to come. It's really, you heard what some of the things that was said. This revenue, this measure will certainly bring a whole lot of money into this. So I'm like, this is wonderful. 3.2 million. I was like, this is definitely generate some revenue. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to, next we're going to do a presentation by West Contra Costa County Unified School District elections. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the City Manager, and City staff. My name is Marcus Walton. I'm the Director of Communications for the West Contra Costa Unified School District, and I'm here today to give you an update on our transition to trustee area elections. As you are probably well aware, the California Voting Rights Act of 2001 was passed by the state in 2002, and it expands on Federal Voting Rights Act, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, a municipality or jurisdiction is said to have violated the California Voting Rights Act if there is evidence of racially polarized voting. And it's important to note that there does not have to be any intent to discriminate, just that racially polarized voting has occurred. I would like to point out that we're having this discussion, although there's not been any study to determine whether racially polarized voting has occurred in the West Contra Costa Unified School District. So we're transitioning to trustee area elections, and currently, as you know, our 5-member Board of Education is elected at large, which means all of the voters within the West Contra Costa Unified School District vote for all 5 members of the school board. Our transition to trustee area elections will mean that we will split the district into 5 geographic areas, and only the voters within a specific geographic area will be able to vote for one representative on the school board. So what this means mainly is that instead of voting every 2 years for either 2 or 3 members to the Board of Education, those of us who live in this area will vote every 4 years for one representative to the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education. Most of you know about our school district, but for the members of the public who are not aware, our school district was formed in 1965, and it was made up of the 4 elementary school districts and 1 high school district that served this area. We currently serve about 29,000 students in 5 cities in the unincorporated areas of West County, and is governed by a 5-member Board of Education. A little bit of background to why I'm in front of you today. Back in January, the district received a letter alleging that the school district has violated the California Voting Rights Act. In March, a lawsuit was filed based on that letter. Now, that very same evening, the board voted to approve a resolution indicating that it did intend to move to trustee area elections. Between April and June, 6 draft trustee area maps were created, and the school board held 5 public hearings, as well as a number of other sessions to gain community feedback and input on those 6 maps. In June, the school board did approve one map. It's called Cities and Schools B. It's just the name the demographer gave that specific map. And it took the map as well as a proposal to the county school board. The county school board rejected the map and sent us back to the drawing board, which leads to me being here in front of you this evening. As I mentioned, so currently, as I mentioned, we were faced with a lawsuit. The school board and the plaintiffs in the lawsuit reached a partial settlement. And so you know, we cannot reach a full settlement until there's actually a map and a few other loose ends are tied up, specifically attorney's fees. But that partial settlement that the court signed mandates that anyone who is a successful candidate for school board in November of 2018 will be limited to 2-year terms. There are currently 3 open seats, 11 people running for those open seats in the school board election. And the reason for the 2-year terms is so that it will help us transition to trustee area elections in November of 2020. And the third and probably most confusing part of this is that in November of 2020, either 2 or 3 of the seats that will be up for election in 2020 will also be 2-year seats. So that means anyone who is running for school board could theoretically need to run 3 times in 6 years. And I wish them all luck with that. So what's next? We're in the process of doing community outreach because we need to create a map so that we can have trustee area elections in November of 2020. And so we're going to school board, to city council meetings, to municipal advisory commissions. We're going to neighborhood councils and homeowners associations and PTA meetings just to encourage people to join us in this process. Now, what is the process going to look like? Basically, the process is this. We now have an opportunity at 3 community meetings to have members of the public work with our demographer to create maps that best represent them and their community members. Those meetings will be held on October 22nd at Riverside Elementary School in San Pablo, October 29th at Steege Elementary School right on the border of El Cerrito and Richmond, and October 30th at the Latina Center on Barrett and 37th in Richmond. Hopefully out of those 3 meetings where community will work with our demographer directly, we'll be able to bring map options to the Board of Education on November 14th, and the board will be able to make a decision on a map to move forward with. Now, in order to create a map, the board has some legal requirements and has also established some other goals and standards that they would like to see reflected in those maps. First is that it's legally required that the trustee areas are equal in population. I believe there's about a 5% variance that's allowed. Secondly, those trustee areas cannot be racially gerrymandered. Third, the trustee areas cannot be drawn in a way that diminishes the power of someone's vote or a group of voters. Number 4, if possible, those areas should be as compact as possible. Number 5, that trustee areas are contiguous. You do not want someone to have to represent a district that stretches from Kensington in the southern end of our district all the way to Hercules by way of North Richmond and Parchester. So the idea is to make sure they're contiguous as well as compact. Standard number 6 the board has approved is that we want to observe communities of interest, and that could mean any number of things. But which leads into number 7, to take into consideration, but not necessarily be bound by, city boundaries and school attendance areas as much as possible. Number 8, we're not to take into account where existing board members live. And number 9, another goal the board has approved is to try to make sure there's at least one trustee area with 50% Latino voters and one trustee area with as close to 50% African American voters as possible. And again, I'd point out that these are goals rather than requirements that the board has put into place, except for the first 4, which are legally required. So to start the process and to start the conversation, there have been 3 draft maps published. And these maps are starting points so that we can have a conversation with the demographer. People can say, I like this, I don't like this, what happens if you move the line here or there, and the demographer can have that conversation. So there are 3 maps. This first map is the map that was submitted by the plaintiff in the plaintiff's attorney in the lawsuit. And by the way, this is how the plaintiff's attorney submitted the map, so all the labels belong to the plaintiff's attorney and not to the school district or the demographer, as well as the lines and the other issues with the map or the way the map is drawn. The next 2 maps were drawn by the district's demographer based on input received from the county school board, as well as the input we've received through community meetings and public hearings. This map is labeled October A, and this next map is October B. One thing I will note is that in all 3 of the maps, all of El Cerrito is together. And so I know that that was one of, as we mentioned, that was one of the criteria or standards that the board set for the drawing of these maps. And finally, so a few resources. You can see all 3 of those maps, much larger. You can print them out. They're in PDF. And there's also an interactive map tool on the district website that you can type in an address and on each of these map options and see which trustee area you could potentially be in. You can type in points of interest, et cetera. You can blow it up as large as you need to see streets and blocks, et cetera, to investigate where you or your neighbors or other places of interest are on these maps. And finally, if you have questions or you have concerns or you want to give your input and can't attend any of these meetings, you can send us an email at our communications@wccusd.net email. And before I end, I just want to point out that every time you mention the word boundary when you're talking about school districts, people automatically assume you're talking about moving where their children go to school. That is not the case. This has to do with how you're represented on the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education, and it does not directly impact where your child goes to school. So with that clarification, I'm open for any questions or comments from members of the City Council.
Okay, thank you. Let's start over here.
Mr. Walton, thank you very much for coming. You and I have interacted over the years, and I appreciate how knowledgeable and calm you are. So I hope you're weathering this storm well.
Thank you.
I did actually take the time to look at the 5 or 6 previous maps that were up on your website, and as you've pointed out, actually, El Cerrito was pretty consistently represented in most of the maps. These maps that are presented tonight are not variations, or they're not exactly those maps. There's some variation of those maps?
These are 3 different maps, yes. The county school board rejected our map. The members of the Board of Education decided to publish brand new maps just as starting points. The old maps were a bit controversial, and so hopefully this is a clean slate and we can start from here with our conversation.
And are you at liberty to tell us why the county rejected the map that you had selected?
The main reason that seemed to bubble to the surface was they did not feel there was enough community input.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily the map you selected, it was the process?
There was some concern about the maps that were in the discussion as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And then if there's members of the public that want to study these and provide, you may want to go back one slide for the answer to this question. If there's members of the public that want to study these maps at home and come and give comments, the best way they could do it is through these 2 contact points that you have up on the slide?
Correct. The website has a couple of great tools. You can print the maps, you can blow them up as large as you like. Plus, another thing is that the demographics of each of these maps and how the trustee areas are built are available on the website as well. It's a lot of text to try to put up on a slide, otherwise I would have tried to get some of them there. But I can't stress enough, the interactive map tool, you can type in your address, you can type in street corners, you can type in some points of interest to see where you lie on any of these variations.
Great. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just had one curiosity. There's a lot of people running right now, so I don't think it'll be a problem, but what would happen if no one ran in a certain area?
I believe that California Education Code allows the Board of Education to fill that seat and have gives them a couple of options on how they can fill the seat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Abelson.
Yes. So what you're going to do now is go out with 3 new maps?
These 3 maps, yes, that are
Okay.
there, yes.
And then so you get public input at the locations that you mentioned?
Correct.
Okay.
People can actually work with the demographer. The demographer will be there with a great tool. He can move lines and talk people through things, and so it's supposed to be a work session. All 3 of these will be work sessions.
So what I think I'm noticing is that there aren't any locations in the upper 2 cities or that region of the school district.
That is correct. Is it possible to get the slideshow back? Well, it's okay. If you look at all of the maps, we think that Pinole and Hercules are okay. There was one request for Pinole and Hercules, and I'll show you. It's just that those 2 communities stay together. That was the only request out of those 2 communities. And on all of the maps that we have, and in fact, the last 4 maps of the original maps in those 2 communities remain together. So their only concern was about that. The real conflict happens down here in the southern region of the district in Richmond, a piece of El Cerrito maybe, well, not El Cerrito, but in the southern portion of Richmond and central Richmond, on how to draw that. That's the most controversial part of this process right now.
And what about Kensington?
Kensington's with El Cerrito here as well.
So it's all considered one?
Yes, we believe that, yes, so on all the maps that are that have been drawn right now. El Cerrito and Kensington are together, and we believe they'll remain that way. However, anything could happen during these meetings, which is why we're encouraging people to still come out and just make sure that that your community is represented in any map that goes before the board.
But what you also said is that this has nothing at all to do with where your child goes to school.
Only in as far as the person who gets elected may wish to tackle school boundaries.
Right, but actually it's 3 out of the 5.
Oh, well, who live in El Cerrito right now?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That hasn't helped us, I can guarantee you. No, I meant that that what everyone will, of course, hope is that at least 3 out of 5 of the school board members chosen across everything represent whatever their point of view is. That's probably what people care about, I would imagine, more than wherever they happen to live. I think that's what everyone would hope for on the issues that they care about. But
well, if I may, we would hope that all 5 of them would come to some consensus and care about the entire district after this process.
I should say at least 3, because that way that point of view prevails. But what I was wondering, it was kind of more about for these meetings, the distance that people would have to go to get to a meeting. And I'm thinking about, for example, people who don't drive. I'm one of those people, so I guess that's why I think about it more than most. But so it would be really difficult to get to some of these meetings, depending on where you happen to live. But it isn't just about what city do you live in, but can you get to, if the city in your area, whatever that is on a day you can't go, then you have to go to, if you're interested in going, that is, go to one of the other meetings. And it seems like they're all kind of bunched together in this, what vaguely looks to me like the center.
That's pretty much true. As I mentioned, most of the concern has been about mostly South Central Richmond, and so that's why we put more of the meetings there. But also, we are working on trying to make sure that we're able to stream those meetings so that folks may be able to follow them online as well, and be able to give at least listen in to what's going on there. We're not so sure if.
And then maybe I missed it, but are they going to be able to give comment online?
They won't be able to give direct comment online. We'll try to monitor it. We're working through that now. I'm working through that with my staff to figure out the best way to ensure that there's an ability to get comment. If it's not online, people can still send an email to the communications website.
And you've already got that.
That is set up,
in
yes.
Place? Okay, so as long as you can you? Is this going to be televised at all?
These will not be televised. The November 14th board meeting will be the only one televised. The other 3, we don't have that capacity, which is why we're looking into the streaming option.
Okay, but so you'll try to rectify that problem?
Yes, we're working on that. Yes.
Yeah, I believe that CCTA has had some experience with doing that kind of stuff. Okay. So if you're looking for somebody to help show you how to do it, they've been very successful at getting large volumes of people responding that way.
Okay, we will definitely reach out to them.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Fideli.
Thank you, Mr. Walton, for coming. So is it safe to say that the district probably wouldn't be going in this direction without the lawsuit?
It would be safe to say.
And was there a determination made that the cost to fight the lawsuit was too much?
There was a definite understanding that no municipality or jurisdiction in the state of California that has gone to court to fight these has won.
So the issue of whether we're going to be better off or not hasn't been determined. It's a matter of moving forward with a legal case, a legal situation.
That's correct.
Okay. Last question is just, you mentioned that these districts shouldn't be racially gerrymandered, yet you talk about 2 districts being 50% Latino and 50% African. Can you talk about that a little bit? One is just a guide.
It's a guideline, and so the purpose is of California Voting Rights Act and the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 is to ensure that underrepresented populations have the ability to elect representatives of their choice. And while the districts can't be racially gerrymandered, for instance, I believe, and there are attorneys who can speak far more intelligently about this, but having a district that looks like a Christmas tree and with ornaments dropping off of it would be something, in order to capture a specific community, would be something that would be considered racially gerrymandered. However, if you were to put, for instance, there's a city or neighborhoods that happen to have large percentages of a certain population in them, that's different than trying to reach out and cherry pick small, cul-de-sacs and small areas in order to create this district, is my understanding. So it seems to be contradictory, but the attorneys and demographer are pretty confident that it's not. So we're.
But a goal of this should hopefully be to have a more diverse trustee board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go to public comment.
There are none.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Mr. Walton. It's great seeing you again. And I attended the breakfast the other day, and it was very successful. Congratulations. And we look forward to having you here again.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, next is a presentation by East Bay Municipal Utility District on water system review. And we have our representative to East Bay Mud Board, Andy Katz, here. Good evening.
Good evening. Greetings, and thank you for inviting me to present on behalf of East Bay Municipal Utility District. I'm Andy Katz. I represent Ward 4, which includes El Cerrito, Kensington, and our surrounding cities of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, and the northern portion of Oakland. East Bay MUD's mission, as you know, is to manage the natural resources that we're the stewards of. We provide reliable, high-quality water and wastewater services at fair and reasonable prices for the people of the East Bay, and we protect and preserve the environment for future generations. We have a proud history of serving what's now 1.4 million customers drinking water all day, every day for 95 years. Looking forward to the next 100 and beyond here in the East Bay. Let's see. Testing this. So allow me to give you a little background on our water system. East Bay MUD serves more than 1.4 million people. It's 325 square mile area in parts of Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And most East Bay MUD water begins a snowmelt in, let's see, we have a graphic that is in this slide. Let me try clicking. No. We have a wonderful map of the watershed that
is hiding.
I will describe to you just where our water comes from. So it begins as snowmelt in the Mokelumne River in the western Sierra. That water is stored at Pardee Reservoir, and before it goes 90 miles westward into the East Bay's reservoir. It's mostly gravity fed, so it goes from Alpine County at the border between Amador and Calaveras counties, where the Pardee Reservoir and Comanche reservoirs are, and but after Pardee it goes 90 miles west down the mountains across the delta to Walnut Creek. And our distribution system includes 5 local reservoirs, 6 water treatment plants, 122 different pressure zones, 164 reservoir tanks, 135 pumping plants, and over 4,200 miles of pipeline. And in El Cerrito, there are 4 reservoirs, 4 pumping plants, 89 miles of pipe that run through 8 different pressure zones.
question?
Mhm.
Where are the 4 reservoirs in El Cerrito?
I was just touring at one today. So, which type of facility were you interested in?
The 4 reservoirs in El Cerrito. I didn't know there were any.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you mean like near Harding School.
So there are different kinds of reservoirs. Some will be open cut and literally are dams that are regulated by the State Division of Safety of Dams, and we've had to make sure are seismically retrofitted. And we also have steel tanks. And we are transitioning over time. We're looking to transition those dams and open cut reservoirs into tanks. So what I'd love to do is get back to you with the map of all 4. I was at the facility that's up by the cemetery today. The board had a special workshop and retreat touring a lot of the facilities that are under construction or planned for major projects in the future. So I'll get back to you with a map of the facilities in El Cerrito and share that with the council. So our strategic plan includes goals for long-term water supply, water quality and environmental protection, long-term infrastructure investment, financial stability, quality customer and community services, and focus on workforce planning and development. So these are all the goals that many public agencies share with us, so you can relate to the challenges that we have and the work that we do in providing these services to you. So here's a glance at our water supply. It goes up and down year to year. The majority of years that I've served on the board in the last 12 years have been in drought of some sort. And the most severe drought sequence that's occurred in recent memory happened not too long ago between 2012 and 2015. And so we saw our water supply plummet, but we bounced right back. So we do not know what comes in the year ahead, but we have a planning approach to being able to be prepared for at least a 3 to 4 year drought sequence that's modeled based on historic rainfall in the past. So right now, we just began a new water year that we count beginning October 1st, and that end of September storage for 2018 was greater than the predicted 630,000 acre feet. And by reference, an acre foot is literally an acre, 1 foot deep. It's about the size of a football field. And some statistics about our storage, the total system at the end of the year was 84% full, and our East Bay reservoirs were 78% full. We have enough local storage to be able to get through 6 months of storage sustainable locally in the event that our aqueducts become unavailable due to an emergency. So our local storage is important, and those facilities are 78% full. And the McCollum watershed precipitation so far has just been 0.13 inches, and that as a percent of average is 10%. So that's just really from October 1st to the present. At every board meeting, I get very detailed presentations about how do we rank in terms of percent compared to an average year, and a lot of statistical analysis about the likelihood of being in a drought based on the current day of the year compared to our historic precipitation. To protect a long-term water supply, we work to protect our current entitlements to water rights in the Sierras and in the Bay Delta process. We plan for uncertainty that ranges from drought, climate change, or regulatory uncertainty. We look at customer conservation levels, and we look to maximize the effectiveness of our conservation dollars that we invest. We have a robust water recycling program, and we're planning for expanding that program. Regional partnerships to diversify supplies and improve reliability. We're talking with Contra Costa Water District about how do we exchange supply back and forth to make sure that we're resilient across Contra Costa County. And sustainable groundwater management too. So we now have a partnership with the Central Valley Project, the federal government, and through the reservoirs that the Department of the Interior operates, we're able to draw water into the Freeport Regional Water Project off of the Sacramento River. So that's an example of some of these projects. I'm very excited about what we are calling the DREAM project. And it comes out of the San Joaquin Valley interests having a project that they called MORE, which was representative of unsustainable use. Literally, they were interested in plugging into our reservoirs and just drawing out of our reservoirs without any water rights attached to them. And for decades, we had tough discussions with San Joaquin Valley interests around their land subsidence. Their land users were continuing to draw so much water out that the land has subsided about 70 feet compared to where it was decades ago. And that creates enormous infrastructure challenges for San Joaquin County, as well as just overdrafted water storage. Once that groundwater is compacted, we will never get that storage back. So just in time, we have been able to come up with a memorandum of understanding with most of the San Joaquin County water interests, and we have a plan to be able to inject groundwater during wet years and to be able to pull it out during dry years. So I'm very excited that we've been able to have that breakthrough agreement, and we're proceeding with the infrastructure plans to make that a reality. So to ensure long-term infrastructure investment, we continue to rehabilitate major facilities such as reservoirs and pumping plants, move forward with aqueduct relining. As we see sea level rise becoming a reality for the Delta, we know that our aqueducts which cross the Delta were not designed to be inundated with salt water. And they were designed to occasionally have splashes of fresh water. They were not designed to have sea level rise with intrusion of salt water. So we have to reline those aqueducts and start thinking seriously about whether our aqueducts can be sustainable above ground, and what the costs would be to move those aqueducts underground. So we're considering a lot of different initiatives to make sure that our infrastructure is safe and secure for future generations. And the current initiative that is driving a lot of our budget is the rebuild of our pipeline system. 4,200 miles of pipeline for a system that was built almost 100 years ago. And much of this pipe technology was, most of our pipes are cast iron, and they're breaking now. A lot of our pipes that were from an era of PVC and certain kinds of plastic that broke much sooner than they were marketed to, that were installed several decades ago. A lot of our system is breaking right now, and we need to be repairing it promptly to make sure that we protect neighborhoods from property damage, ensure that we prevent water loss that's unnecessary, and make sure that we have infrastructure that's working. So some of the work underway here, and this, Janet, Councilmember Abelson may answer some of your questions. Nearby, we have the Sobrante Water Treatment Plant upgrade. It's a $17 million project. Many of you may remember that we did have some moments during the drought where we had the unprecedented event of some unusual tastes that had no water quality concerns, but it had an aesthetic impact. So the water tasted and smelled a little bit earthy for a few weeks, more so about a week at a time. We found that this was because of organic material in the water, that because of a drought, because of that organic material being, really because our reservoir levels were so low, our water draws were coming at the level of algae. And we had to relocate our water draw to be away from the algae, but we can foresee a time when we may not be able to avoid it. We can foresee that with droughts and climate change becoming more severe, that we may have to be sharing a lower level of the reservoir with where we're drawing the water from. So to be able to improve that taste and odor control, we want to be able to treat the water with ozone equipment, and that will be able to address those taste issues that occurred. Yes, it's an expensive project, and so your feedback about, is the risk of having those taste and odor issues worth this investment? That's a helpful dialogue to hear about. But we have heard that we want to make sure that we have state-of-the-art water treatment equipment. We really did hear from a lot of customers that it was a problem for them, and we want to make sure that people can trust the tap water. And even though it doesn't present a public health issue, it does present a perception issue, and we want people to reliably turn on the tap and trust that the water is safe to drink, and not resort to bottled water. So a little bit more on pipeline rebuild. We're investing millions in pipeline replacement. So right now, when I first joined the board, we were only replacing about 10 miles of pipe per year. And in this upcoming budget cycle, we are moving that up to about 17 miles of pipe per year, and we have a goal of getting up to 40 miles of pipe per year pretty soon. Even at 40 miles, we would not be at the proper rate for a 100-year replacement. So we want to accelerate this as soon as we can, but each crew that we bring on requires training. We need to make sure that that crews are brought on in a way where we're able to support their development in being able to be good stewards of the neighborhood and take care of neighborhoods and leave them the way they found them, or better, when a main break repair is occurring. We need to make sure that we have quality workship when we do deploy a crew. So we can't, it's a good idea to make sure that we do this gradually so that we have some business continuity in the agency. But these are our goals to make sure that as we move ahead to the next decade that we're on track to replace our infrastructure. Earthquake preparedness is a critical thing that we look at. We imagine that we will have an earthquake of 7.0 magnitude or greater on the Hayward Fault. And so we are prepared, and we've invested over $300 million over the last 2 decades to strengthen our large pipes and facilities. So from the major retrofit that happened through the Caldecott Tunnel to make sure that major pipeline was prepared for a 7.0. And lots of drills. Our staff have regular drills to make sure that we're able to report to duty and get people back into service as soon as possible. That said, we do need to make sure that our customers are aware that we could face outages up to 7 days. We really encourage everybody to have up to 1 gallon per person per day. And our customer surveys indicate that we're not ready as a community. So I would urge you as city leaders to, in your outreach about disaster preparedness, to include water in an emergency supply in your communications about disaster, so that 1 gallon per person per day. We think that in a typical disaster recovery, it may only be as soon as 3 to 5 days, but to be really prepared, the ideally prepared household should be ready for up to 7 days before everyone is disconnected, everyone is reconnected, and the system has been disinfected. So what it takes to keep us delivering that water, we have 2,000 employees, a $2 billion 2-year budget, and that covers our water system and our wastewater system, both operating, capital, and debt service. We aim to be financially responsible and have been seriously exploring moving away from debt service capital and moving to pay-as-you-go capital to avoid a loss of money through unnecessary interest costs. And we think that, especially as interest starts to rise, that might be a trend that would make more sense. So lately, we have not been moving in that trend because we've seen borrowing be very inexpensive, and we have a AAA bond rating, so we're able to borrow very inexpensively. But that may change given the Fed's recent decisions. So we do take a hard look at what's the most financially responsible way to finance this infrastructure. And those are some overviews of our biennial budget and the splits between water, wastewater, capital, operations, and debt within our budget. And, just by example, for the statistic I have in front of me is an average household using 375 gallons per day. That doesn't really represent, I think, El Cerrito customer use, but that would only be less than $8 per month for water for the recent rate increase that occurred. So we recently did raise rates by 9% and 9.25% in fiscal years 17 and 18. And we're starting a new budget and rate cycle in fiscal year 20. Part of the factors that drive our rate structure is that we have fixed costs driving our budget, but variable revenues. So even when we have the need to encourage conservation, we still have the same 4,200 miles of pipe, the same water treatment plants, the same pumping plants. This does lead to a big debate on the board, where I, as a representative of communities that I feel conserve to our greatest abilities, need rate structures that still represent the conservation that we have been deserving rewarding, that we deserve to be rewarded for. So our board will be considering our rate revisions over the coming years. So in about 2 or 3 years, we'll be doing a cost of service study to look at whether rate reform makes sense. And I will continue to push for reducing the fixed charge, which represents about 28% of our bill. I think that we should be reducing the fixed charge and increasing the variable portion of our charge. And I believe that that's in the best interests of a majority of our customers to have a price incentive to conserve and to help customers that are struggling to afford all of their bills have a choice about whether they want to avoid revenue that they may not necessarily be causing. So this is a comparison of very average size bills. For El Cerrito customers, that average bill is actually lower, much lower. But this is how we compare to our comparison agencies for water costs. We always strive to be below the median to show that we're delivering affordable water service to everyone here. These are some examples about where each rate dollar goes, and the majority you can, or close to majority you can see is infrastructure improvements and supplemental water supply, and the water service. So that's a breakdown about how our budget is organized. We've been expanding outreach for our customer assistance program. We offer a 50% discount for low-income customers. The definition is the same as PG&E's CARE program, roughly 214% of the federal poverty line. And so qualifying customers can get their basic indoor usage discounted by about 50%. And the wastewater bill also is discounted by 35%. So those charges are available for reduction through that program, and it does not. I believe in El Cerrito, because your utility tax is based on a percentage of the bill, that would be proportionate. But I'm not sure of that. But we don't control that tax. That's something that we include on the bill at the request of the city. But on our bill, we do offer that discount, and we use our community's property taxes that are collected from East Bay MUD to be able to offer that program for support for low-income customers. What I find, though, is that many customers, whether it be social services, mental health issues, just financial distress, there's a booming economy for some, but not for everyone. And many people end up in arrears on their budget before they find out about CAP, before they can get enrolled. We're having a discussion internally about whether it's legally or technologically feasible to and a good budget decision, and I'm supportive of this, to extend qualification of CAP retroactively if the customer can show that they qualify. Just recently, I took a call from a woman with many kids in her household, and the water had already been turned off for months, and the family was bathing with bottled water. And This was brought on by some personal and medical issues of the customer and the head of household that really by the time they even found out that there was a customer assistance program, the water bill was already thousands of dollars. So I think it's important that we help people find out about this program as soon as possible. So if there is an outreach arm of the city that helps connect people to social services, to public benefits, that we promote the existence of this program. And when the board is prepared in our next budget cycle in January for consideration of how to improve this program, I would welcome a support letter from the city about extending this program qualifications to be retroactive, because I think that's a way that we can prevent water shutoffs and financial distress, so that people can find out about how to get involved in this important program that's intended for qualifying customers. People can get applications very easily just by calling our main customer service line. That's 1-866-40-EBMUD. So just by calling that number or by going to our website at ebmud.com, customers can get access to that application and get enrolled. And once the application is submitted, they can qualify. And if they already have qualifications under PG&E's CARE program, we'll automatically qualify them. So that's a little bit about CAP and how we try to make our water service more affordable for everybody to be able to afford this essential service. So water conservation is also a major priority. We had amazing activities during the drought. We replaced, just in the last fiscal year, we replaced 330,000 square feet of lawn. That's on top of 1 million square feet of lawn during the drought. So our customers have really been responding to increased rebates that we've been offering. It's not as funny to say cash for grass anymore, but that is kind of what we offer. And we have a lot of different rebates and water saving devices that add up, and they're meant to encourage customers to rip out their lawns, get rid of the water wasting appliances, and get the latest and greatest technologies. So lots of devices distributed. We always give out free washers and for free faucet washers, and we'll also do home audits for free. We support California Youth Energy Services that does these home energy audits that also covers water too. So, and we also are expanding water waste reports where customers can get compared to their neighbors. We find that just by learning about what are your neighbors doing, that actually changes everyone's awareness about how to conserve water. So I'm very proud of El Cerrito. I don't have the number in front of me, but I want to get back to you about just how good El Cerrito has been doing, because I know that here, El Cerrito residents really did respond when we asked for help in the drought, and I want to thank you as council members and the community for doing your part to step up and help us save water during that difficult time during the drought. So what's next for East Bay MUD? Our water supply outlook is certainly sufficient to meet demand for the coming year, and we don't know what lies ahead, but we know that we're prepared. Our water sales have stabilized, and our pipeline replacements are increasing from 10 to 15 miles a year, and we're moving towards 20 in 2021. So the upgrade of Sobrante and Orinda treatment plants with ozone to address operational changes in source water is something that we're doing. We're looking at adding UV treatment to the Orinda treatment plant so that we are able to be fully protected from the risk of cryptosporidium. Our water is always safe to drink, but we've actually never had cryptosporidium sampled out of Pardee Reservoir, but we want to be extra prepared for pathogens and to make sure that we have the latest technologies enabled at our treatment plants so that we always have clean and reliable water. We want to make sure that we have diverse water supply options, but from my perspective, that should never come at the expense of environmental protection. We had a long debate in this community and brought it to the state legislature to protect Pardee Reservoir, to protect the McCullumee River from the threat of potential flooding from a project that would have raised Pardee Reservoir. And I'm very excited that this year the governor signed legislation that was in a trailer bill that expanded the Wild and Scenic Rivers program to 17 miles of the McCollum River that begins above Pardee Reservoir all the way up the upper McCollum River. So the McCollum River is officially a wild and scenic river, and it's protected for future generations. The board has a annual river rafting experience that we do every year. If you're interested in participating in that, and how to engage in this river, that's our heritage and part of the resources that we're the stewards of. I encourage you to check out the beauty of the McCollum River because now it's going to be protected for future generations. So we also are continuing work on the customer assistance program. So that's our presentation. We're getting the word out a lot more. We're on social media and Twitter. If you have any questions for me personally, you can also reach me by email at andy.katz, K-A-T-Z, @ebmud.com. So thank you for having me to present this information and update about EBMUD to you.
Thank you. Greg Lerner.
Yeah, I've got Andy. Mr. Katz, thank you very much for coming tonight and taking the time to present to us on all these programs. I do have a couple of El Cerrito related questions, and then at least one that you may not be prepared to answer, which is the East Bay MUD's position on the Bay Delta plan. I know a couple of years ago you came before us and we had presentations about some large projects, pipeline replacement projects in El Cerrito. And there's at least one street that we have, for those that have been tracking us, we actually scored second or third in pavement quality within the Bay Area. And there's one street that is bringing us down. And that's the street we're not repaving because, in theory, 2 or 3 years ago, you were going to come through with a pipe. So when are you coming through with that pipe so that we can actually start to begin to get a better pavement score?
Mm-hmm. What street is that?
Richmond.
Richmond, okay. Thank you for letting me know. I know that El Cerrito has prided itself in quality pavement, and I really admire...
That's not the only street. I mean, you guys are going to come through a couple other streets, small streets, but that's the big one that we've been holding off on. I mean, pretty substantially, so...
And I think El Cerrito has a model program for how to help coordinate work in the streets because we do have some difficulty working with public works departments on coordination. It's a shame when we waste public resources and one agency comes in and does a lot of work just before or after another agency does. So we need to make sure that we're not pulling your patience too much with the quality of that street. And likewise, we have a limited budget in what we're able to advance. We've graded all of our water mains A through F, and we generally are going F up through A to make sure that we're taking care of the water mains that are breaking or about to break, a little bit of the area surrounding it to make sure that we have a cost-effective job. So I will ask my staff to look at Richmond Street and to make sure that we're...
Yeah, just so we have an understanding so we can tell the public, because as Mr. Fideli threw his hands up.
Yeah.
I stole his question.
A lot of stuff that we can do on Richmond, and I keep hearing we're waiting for you guys to do your upgrade. Yeah.
I will get back to you with an update about where that is in our planning.
Yeah, and I know the California Environmental Quality Act is something you needed to perform to bring that project forward from the planning phases. However, it's probably been a decade since you brought that CEQA document forward, and in that time, we've changed some of our land use, and we have land use planning that's going to add something to the order of 1,500 units, or about, what is that, about 2,000 to 2,100 new users. And just curious if, before you bring that pipe in and realize it's too small, if there's an opportunity for you to plan ahead for some of the population changes that we're now experiencing in El Cerrito that may not have been on the horizon when you did your environmental review document, probably saying, oh, we're just going to replace in kind and it's not going to promote growth, because I know promoting growth is an Environmental Quality Act issue. We've already done the promote growth action, and now is potentially an opportunity for you guys, before you come in with a pipe that's undersized, to potentially consider what our new demand is. So I'm just curious if that's something that can be taken into consideration before you need to tear up our street twice in a decade as opposed to just once in a lifetime.
Mhm. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
And then I did allude to the maybe it's a softball for you, but I know for many agencies in the Bay Area, the Bay Delta Plan is not a softball. I was just curious, you didn't mention it, and you may not want to talk about it tonight because we are running short on time, but I can't go without at least asking what East Bay MUD's plan is around the Bay Delta Plan.
Sure. So the Bay Delta Plan is a complex proceeding and includes multiple different interconnected proceedings that the state is engaged in. I think it is important because the state may be taking action that would curtail the water rights of urban agencies, and could be reallocating some of those rights to make sure that there's water flows for the environment, but also could be providing water flows that would benefit exporter uses, and exporters are primarily agricultural users. So I think it's important to be aware of this, and I thank you for the question. East Bay MUD's staff are engaged in settlement discussions with the State Water Resources Control Board to engage in the proceeding and protect East Bay MUD's water rights. So we also have been considering how can East Bay MUD be a leader to make sure that as we have a plan that would affect what all of the similarly situated users do, and that could come as part of a negotiation with other interests that have different types of perspectives about water use. Are we a leader in if we're going to provide more water flow for the environment? Is that coming as something that's proportionate to other stakeholders, or is that something that's just something that is being given at the expense of no proportionate action from exporters or other interests? And I would refer you to an interesting article in the San Francisco Chronicle about San Francisco Public Utilities Commission's position, which has been very defensive of San Francisco's position. My personal view, I can't reveal what happens in our board's closed sessions, but my personal view is that East Bay MUD should be representing our residents by being environmental leaders and pushing for benefit to the environment, and by trying to leverage, even though we're only 1% of the contribution of water to the Delta, but by trying to leverage our role as a leading public agency to benefit the environment and have proportionate contributions from the exporters.
Indeed, and the article you're referencing was just this last weekend. But I do want to drive this point home to our residents. What you're basically trying to do is balance the environment, which El Cerrito is very sensitive to and very supportive of, with reliability and water quality. And you had a long portion of your presentation about the taste and odor and aesthetics of water. And so that's part of what we would be faced with more of, is having those types of issues if our water sources weren't as closely guarded as your agency is trying to guard. So I want to thank you for trying to balance between our users and the environment, and protecting our water source quality, reliability issues. So thank you.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Hi, Mr. Katz. Thank you for your presentation, and I'm very interested in the support letter that you requested, and I'd be happy to help you with that. So could you please send us some more information?
Yes, I'd be glad to do that, likely around the late November timeframe, if that is around the timeframe to weigh in for a January workshop.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Abelson.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming. And I think you've given us a lot of really interesting and useful information. and I appreciate that you are here in person to do that. And I don't see anybody in the background telling you what to say. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for doing it on a consistent basis, too. And I think it's really helpful to us. I was wondering if you could describe to me a little bit something that when I hear about water quality and I hear about chemicals being put in water to make it taste better, then I start wondering if those chemicals aren't in fact inducing things into the water that are not healthy for us. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a lawyer, not a chemist. So I'll have to get back to you on the complete explanation. For example, of ozone treatment. But it's my understanding is that it's basically like providing a high dose of air through the water to help some of the chemicals that create odor and taste issues dissipate and leave their attachment to the water molecule. So I'm glad to get you a more detailed and accurate explanation of that example. But we do find that the addition of chlorine and ammonia to create chloramine is essential for ensuring that public health and safety is protected. We want to be resilient to being able to drink water without the risk of incurring pathogens or viruses or bacteria when we drink water. So that's why we treat our water with disinfectant. And we also have been proud to have consistently been below all federal and state requirements for water quality for really the entire time that I've served on the board of directors. We have always had clean and reliable water that meets all state and federal standards, and that is healthy and safe to drink. So able to answer any other questions, and we'll get you more information about the ozone treatment that's proposed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fidelli.
Yes, Andy, thank you again for coming. You come on a regular basis, and we appreciate that. It's important to us. Since Councilmember Lyman asked the important question on the Richmond Street upgrade, that is important to us. It's the center parallel street in our city to San Pablo Avenue. I just have one small question. The DREAM program you were talking about, does that stand for something? What does DREAM mean?
DREAM, most projects that have like all capital acronyms, it means something. And I didn't come up with the acronym, so I don't know what.
But there is an acronym for it.
There is an acronym for it, so I can.
Might explain what the program does.
It doesn't really explain what the program does.
Okay.
I think that there was an interest in having a celebration to what was really about a 3-decade long bewilderment about why could we not help each other. So we were finally, and I think that really the acronym. It probably the word of the acronym probably means more than the actual words that are the component of it. But it's because from an engineering perspective, it's better described as conjunctive use or groundwater storage. So those words are not in the letters of DREAM. But this concept of doing a joint use project in the northern San Joaquin Valley has been a dream of many of us at East Bay Mud for a long time. And so to have that breakthrough really has been a dream.
Okay, thank you.
Andy Katz, I have one question. Does East Bay Mud have a recommendation on Prop 3?
East Bay Mud, as a board, convened and decided to take no position on Proposition 3. In the past, we have supported all bonds that have come to us that would invest water. So by not taking a position on Prop 3, it is a departure from how we've treated previous water bonds, where we've historically just simply supported the water bond. But here, our staff analysis provided some questions about whether there's accountability. The legislature will not have any ability to modify the allocations that the voters would be committing itself to. These would be general obligation bonds that will be required by order of the voters to be sold, regardless of the status of the budget, regardless of changing priorities. So those were some things that we found were interesting. We also noticed that many of these projects are not necessarily going to benefit East Bay Mud customers. They may be good projects. The environmental restoration projects, I would say, are good projects. The improvement of environmental quality for customers in the Central Valley who don't have access to potable water, those are good projects. It would be great if the legislature could consider how to make the right projects that the state as a whole can benefit from, having those projects be paid for through a future GO bond that the legislature would have continuing appropriative oversight of. And then for the projects that would be primarily benefiting the exporters, those that would be pumping water out of the Delta or would be building a conveyance around the Delta that would cause the need for mitigations, like those environmental restoration projects, we need to figure out which projects should be paid for by those exporters as opposed to general obligation bonds that the state's taxpayers necessarily wouldn't be the best ones to subsidize. So while the agency hasn't taken a stance, I hope those are some helpful educational points about what Prop 3 does.
Definitely, thank you. Also, I know you've talked about vegetation management in the past. I know you're working with East Bay Parks as well on that. And do we have anything that we need to be mindful of here in El Cerrito with working with East Bay Mud and the areas that you control here?
Generally, we don't have a lot of our properties are not necessarily the ones that are the ones of most concern for fire protection, but we do in El Cerrito, I mean. But across the district and our land holdings, we are very careful to manage our land for fire protection and prevention. And we have a different approach than what the Parks District and the University and the City of Oakland are doing. Because we're managing watershed lands, we have never attempted to have more widespread application of pesticides and herbicides. We know that those chemicals drain into a watershed that that wildlife lives and exists in, that eventually does drain into drinking water. So we want to make sure that for areas that are drinking water, that we're not applying pesticides and herbicides. So for that reason, we don't have use of pesticides and herbicides in watershed land. We have limited IPM in areas that do not drain into drinking water, but within areas that do drain into drinking water, we do not use pesticides and herbicides, and we manually remove eucalyptus by hand, on horseback. It does cost more, but it's also worth protecting our health and safety, especially as we see the human health costs of some of these powerful herbicides.
Appreciate that. I don't believe do we have open anyone for public comment? Okay. Well, thank you. And I know, you've been with us for many, many years as our representative for East Bay Mud. And I look forward in working with you another 4 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy to represent El Cerrito for the last 12 years and happy to be back anytime.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Next, a presentation by Contra Costa County Animal Services update. So you've been waiting very patiently. Thank you for.
Yeah, so I'll go as quick as possible here. Mayor Quinto, members of the council, thank you for allowing me the time tonight to come and provide you an update on the Animal Services Department. Moving right into it. Contra Costa Animal Services provides animal services for 18 of the 19 cities in Contra Costa County. The only city we don't provide animal services for is the city of Antioch. They operate their own animal services agency. which is operated as a subset of their police department. However, for the unincorporated county and the other 18 cities, we are the animal services provider. Our department consists of 6 divisions. Our field services, those are our officers in the field. What makes them unique from a lot of makes us unique from a lot of other animal services agencies in the state is that we are a law enforcement agency, standalone. Other counties will contract with a humane society or another organization to do certain aspects of it. Some may be an aspect of the agriculture department or the sheriff's department or a local city police department. We are our own entity. Our officers are quasi-law enforcement. They have powers of arrest, which allows them to do things like help your city staff, your fire, your police, your code enforcement go into areas where there may be a dangerous or aggressive animal, so that we would go in there and subdue the animal so that your team can do their job. Our shelter operations, those are the people who take care of the animals, the feeding, the watering, the cleaning of the kennels, so on and so forth. Our medical services division, they provide the care and the treatment of the animals, the spay and neuter surgeries, and our low-cost vaccination clinic, and our low-cost public spay and neuter clinic. Our clerical division, that's the first line that you're going to encounter when you either come into one of our offices in Martinez or Pinole, or if you call us on the phones. The clerks are the people you're going to first speak with. They're our customer service division, as we like to call it. Our volunteers know Animal Services Agency can operate effectively without a strong contingent of volunteers. We're very proud to have a core volunteer of about over 250 volunteers who give their time and their talent each week. And then there's our administration, our director, our deputy director, our administrative service officer, communications director, and our personnel team. So what I'm really here to talk about are the specific services provided to the city of El Cerrito for the calendar year 2017. In 2017, our most active activity in El Cerrito was stray animal impounds. We did 365 of those. We did another 131 deceased animal impounds. We did 90 noise, animal, and inhumane ordinance investigations. And 12 animal rescues and 4 local agency assists. I believe all of those were with your police department, and the majority of those were serving warrants. Important to note that per our contract, every year, the way you guys pay the county for animal services is on a per capita basis, and that rate is set to increase every year at the turn of the fiscal year per the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. This year, the CPI was last year, the CPI was about 2.9%, which resulted in a 17-cent per capita rate increase, which has you going from $5.94 in 2017-2018 to $6.11 for fiscal year 2018-2019. I would be remiss not to mention that the majority of Bay Area municipalities are paying approximately $11.80 per capita for their animal services. Antioch is well over $8, and where I live in Marin County, we pay about $11.60 per capita. So you're getting a very good premium with a level of service that most other animal services agencies aren't able to provide. On an annual basis, we meet with all the city managers and police chiefs for the cities that we contract with. And we've developed a new reporting structure on a quarterly basis that'll be provided to the city managers and the police chiefs. I won't go through all of it, but one of the things that I did want to share with you is, as a law enforcement agency or any public safety agency, one of the metrics you're gauged by is your response time. However, prior to 2018, CCAS did not have a response time metric. It was not something that we really tracked. We didn't have priority levels or target response times identified. Captain Andriotti, working with her team of lieutenants this year, put together target response time priority levels, and we began implementing and tracking them in about mid-March of this year. So the period you're looking at here is from April 1st to September 30th. And as you could see, it's still something we're trying to wrap our heads around, but when you look at the median response time For the priority ones, that it's kind of where we want it to be. We need to get the average down, but once we do a data cleanup, when you see the maximum response time, 5 days, 19 hours, 59 minutes, that's normally a data entry error, and so somebody just put the wrong date or the wrong time in there, and it throws off everything else. Knowing the numbers and going over them with Captain Andriotti, I believe we are well under a response time for priority ones in El Cerrito of 2 hours, which is our target response time. You may ask, why is your priority one response time 2 hours? The reason for that being is that all of our officers are dispatched out of our Martinez location. We don't have outposts throughout the county like the sheriff's department does. All of our officers are dispatched out of one location, and then typically they're out for most of the day in the beat area. We separate into 4 different beat areas. West Beat, which is basically everything west of the I-80 corridor, North Central, which is Martinez, Concord, South Central, San Ramon, La Miranda area, and then East County, which is your Oakley, Brentwood, Knights, and Byron, all the way out to Discovery Bay. So a couple of policy updates. We did pass a noisy animal ordinance update last year. The city of El Cerrito has adopted that ordinance. It essentially changed the process from one that was cyclical and rarely resulted in resolution to one where now there is actually a hearing process and people are being heard and claims are being adjudicated. We also passed a rooster ordinance this year. I don't believe there are any parcels within the city limits that this applies to, but by way of background, until this year, Contra Costa County was one of the only counties in the state of California that didn't have a rooster ordinance on the books, which basically anybody who engaged in the activities of cockfighting knew that Contra Costa County was a safe haven because we had no mechanism for probable cause. This ordinance gives us that, and we began to enforce it mid this year. So our department at a glance, our animal intake in 2017 was just about 10,500 animals. We were very proud to reunite about 20% of those with their owners. We did 3,500 public adoptions, another 2,600 adoptions to transfer partners. We returned 911 cats to the field, and our live release rate is among the best for municipal shelters in the state and the country. Our dog live release rate is 92%. Our dog and cat live release rate is 87%, meaning that basically 9 out of 10 animals that come into our shelter leave the shelter alive. We did over 2,000 low-cost vaccinations for residents of Contra Costa County, over 5,000 low-cost spay and neuter surgeries, and as I mentioned, we did about 571 police, fire, and code enforcement assists. So finishing up, talking about opportunities and challenges, we have a great opportunity to increase the low-cost spay and neuter vaccination programs to address pet overpopulation in the county. Right now, we're running the only games in town. We're looking to increase that. We have an environment ripe for collaboration with local animal welfare groups. We have a hardworking, committed staff and volunteer corps, and a supportive and engaged community. Our challenges include balancing the life-saving with the length of stay and quality of care. As our live release rate continues to go up, we're holding animals longer, and the focus has to be on the quality of care that they're receiving in the shelter. We need to update our processes and procedures to bring the department into the 21st century. That was a big thought behind the new animal noise process. The process was one where you called our office, you had to wait to get a clerk on the phone, and then we'd send out the first complaint, and then if the problem continued, you had to call us back, get another one of your neighbors within 300 feet of the nuisance to call us. Now all that's gone. The way you do it is you go to our website, you fill out the first form, a notice is sent, you got to give the neighbor 15 days to fix the problem. If it continues beyond that, you go back to our website, you download an affidavit, you get it either notarized and sent back to us, or you bring it to our Panola Martinez location and get it signed and witnessed, and that automatically triggers a citation of the person with the noisy animal. That person with the citation has a form where they could appeal the citation, which would trigger a hearing where both parties come forward, we discuss it, and we adjudicate it. That whole idea has cleared up a lot of space in our call center. We have a service area of about 1.2 million people. It's very common that you could be on hold with our department for 30 to 40 minutes on average. So we're trying to figure out how we move that stuff onto our website. I'm promising you, you're going to see more of that from our department. We need to increase our staffing. We need to decrease our volume of animals. We need to address our physical facility constraints. Martinez is a great facility. Pinole is, I think I have a closet at home bigger than Pinole. So we need to address that and continuous population growth in the county, both the two-legged and four-legged variety. And 5 easy ways to support your local shelter. You could always consider adoption as the first option. Ensure your pets are licensed and microchipped. They have much greater percentages of being reunited with their owners if they become lost. You could certainly volunteer at the Martinez or Pinole shelter. Whatever your time or your talent, we have a role for you. And I'd certainly offer to the council members the opportunity to do a ride along with one of our officers in your beat area. I've had a number of council members take us up on this, and it's something that they really appreciate and have all reported that it's not what they thought initially. And sign up to take a tour of the Martinez or Pinole shelter. Come learn about the amazing things we're doing, and follow us on social media. So I hope I went quick enough for you, and with that, I will take any questions you have.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to let Mr. Fedeli go first because I don't want to steal his question.
Okay. No, you don't. No, I always appreciate your questions, Greg. You mentioned the release rate for dogs and cats, and then dogs and cats. What's the dogs and cats?
So dogs and cats we keep live release rates for every animal we take in. The only ones that we kind of categorize together are the wildlife that we bring in because they're really not our jurisdiction. So we track for dogs, for cats, livestock, rabbits, so on and so forth. However, we know what the people really want when they're talking about live release rate. Dogs and cats. How many are leaving alive? That's why we group the dogs and cats together to get that 87% live release rate to show us the total number of dogs and cats coming into our shelter. How many of those, the percentage-wise, are leaving alive?
Combination of those two separate numbers.
Okay. The cat number itself is 83%, and the reason for that is because during kitten season, you get neonatal kittens coming in that if you don't have a foster that's able to bottle feed them every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, unfortunately, they have to be euthanized because those are critical care situations.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Abelson.
I'm just thinking about that last comment. So is that to say then that a number of neonatal kittens, is that the right word?
Yes.
Are actually euthanized?
A very small percentage at our shelter. We have a very robust foster corps of volunteers that will be able to handle neonatal kittens. However, sometimes there are some that come in during kitten season, which runs essentially from April to mid-September. That's when cats are giving birth and the shelters are flooded with new kittens coming in, which can be a good thing, really. But if they don't have a mama cat in the shelter to be able to nurse them, or a foster that's able to feed them, then they would necessarily be euthanized because they would not have an ability to get food and sustenance. A number of those kittens, because when we're euthanizing neonatal kittens, most of the time it's not because we don't have a foster. Most of the time they're coming in presenting with another medical condition that is not something you would normally treat for a neonatal kitten.
Okay. Do you work with the feral cat groups?
We have our own community cat program is what we call it, which consists of 3 different aspects. One of those is a trap neuter release program where members of the community can bring trap. We will provide traps to members of the community, whereas they could trap community cats in their neighborhood. They could bring them to us. We'll do the surgery, the spay or the neuter for free, and we will vaccinate that cat to quality public health and safety issues, and then we'll give that cat back to the person to return to the community. The other aspect is called return to field. Those are cats that come from a community that doesn't necessarily want them back. Maybe it's a strong birding community and they feel that the cats are impacting the birds, so they want them, they'll bring them to the shelter and have indicated that they don't want them back. In those cases, we work to rehome those kittens. Certainly, if the cats or kittens are friendly, we're going to adopt them out. They're going to be put on a track to adoption. However, feral cats who can't, we either have to relocate them or they go into the third aspect of the program, which is our working cat program, which we like to basically advertise as organic pest eradication. If you have a barn, if you have a dairy, if you have a rodent problem, we have cats that they're not going to be the ones that snuggle up to you on the couch. But they'll go get you a rat, I'll tell you that. So we adopt those cats out to through our working cat program. And again, it's just our commitment. You know, we will never be a no-kill shelter. We won't call ourselves no-kill. Our statistics qualify us to call ourselves no-kill. We'll never do that because that's an advocacy term, and we're not in the business of advocacy. We're in the business of saving lives. So instead of saying no-kill, we say yes to saving lives.
Thank you, I think.
Councilmember Greg Lyman.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bardo, for coming tonight. And you certainly touched on a few things that I'm going to follow up on. One is the $6.11 per capita. Per capita, how do you figure that out? I mean, how do you charge on a per capita basis?
Well,
is it per parcel or per capita?
No, per capita.
Okay.
So that's based on the Department of Labor statistics that come from the state. It's provided, and the county also keeps those statistics. So when we have to do that, that's how it's put to us, and we just follow those numbers. We're not telling you like how many people you have in your city per capita. We're getting that from the authorities who have their finger on that pulse.
And we write you a check on a monthly basis?
I believe it's a quarterly basis.
Quarterly basis. So it's about $150,000 from El Cerrito? Yes. And yet we only have 200 calls, so that's about $750 a trip?
True, but keep in mind there are a number of animals that come from this community that aren't initiated by calls. So we have officers in the field that will impound animals that are stray in the community here. You know, we have a traveling officer in the beat area all day long that will respond to certain things, such as, you know, say, like I talked about earlier, and assist with your police department. That wouldn't go down as a call for service. That's a different type of call. So that wouldn't reflect in that calls for service. So there are a number of animals that are coming from our community. And then, you know, there's certainly the services additionally that are not call-based that we're providing to your community, such as the low-cost vaccination clinic, the low-cost spay and neuter clinic. We have a good amount of people from El Cerrito and West County utilizing those services.
Good. That's an excellent response to the simple math that I had done. We did have a vocal resident who came several times a couple of years ago, very upset with the Pinole facility, which is smaller than your closet, and also very upset with the fees that we were paying that should be going towards upgrading your closet-sized facility in Pinole. Can you please, what would you say if that resident was here tonight? He's not. What would you say to that resident tonight and their question about this facility and its inability to do the Yes to Lives mission?
Well, certainly. You know, what I would say is already we have a couple of improvements planned for the Pinole facility. The footprint it's on is very small, and we do not own the lot. We own the building, but we lease the space. So we're very limited in what we could do. One of the things the county is doing as a whole, not just with regards to animal services, is looking at our infrastructure, our facilities, and developing a book on what needs improvement and kind of triaging that. I believe that the Pinole facility is certainly in that process, aside from the improvements we already have planned there. But the improvements that we'll be doing are going to be minor. They're basically adding a couple of new rooms in there. Pinole, as a shelter, is not overwhelmed, and it doesn't prevent us from doing any of our life-saving measures there. What it's more an ability of is being able to have space to take the animals out and socialize them there. That's what we're really lacking in Pinole. And also, if you've been in the area, there's no like close by park where you could take the animals to socialize them or get them some running around time. So that's something that we're looking at and, we'll continue to address, but I don't believe there's an easy solution in the cards right now.
Final question. You discussed the noise ordinance and the benefits potentially of how it might reduce call times because you can go online with it, and that the ordinance is less onerous to those that have noise complaints. I live in essentially an amphitheater bowl, and the slightest noise echoes and reverberates quite well in the area. But we're a city. You said something about we adopted it, and can you clarify, are you adjudicating noise issues in our city as a result of adopting your ordinance? Is that what's happening?
Yes, essentially what happens, like I said, the way the process works is, and if you bear with me, if Councilmember Lyman, if you call and you say, hey, my neighbor has a noisy animal, we are going to take your complaint there, and or if you go...
Assume it's the future and I go to your website.
So it's the future. In the past, you had to call our department. You would call us up, you'd say, hey, my neighbor has a noisy animal. We would send you a letter, we'd send the neighbor a letter. Then, we'd say, you got to give them, at that point, it was 10 days. And so the 10 days would go by, the problem would still exist. You'd call us back and we'd say, okay, now you have to get one of your neighbors that lives within 300 feet of the noise nuisance to call us up. If that happened, if you actually got somebody to call us, the best that would happen is we would send an officer out. It's a low priority call. So the noise is happening at 8, 9 o'clock at night. We're sending an officer at 11 in the morning. They're unable to verify the claim, so it gets closed as unfounded. The problem continues to exist. We continue to get calls from you. Your neighbor continues to call us and try to find out who's harassing him by filing these complaints, because most of the time they were coming in anonymously, and we knew that. The one thing that wasn't happening was this thing that should have, neighbors talking to neighbors at the front end and trying to address the problem there. So with the new process, you come to our website, you're going to you're going to fill out the form. It's embedded on our website. That's automatically going to trigger those notices the same way as if you called the first time. Now, instead of going to find another neighbor, if the problem exists beyond 15 days, we increased it a little to allow for the notification via snail mail. Now you're going to go back to our website, you're going to download the affidavit, get it notarized and sent back to us or signed and witnessed, and then that's going to automatically trigger a citation of the person with the noisy animal. They have a couple of options at that point. They could pay the fine and say, okay, and for the first fine it's $100. If it continues beyond, if they're cited a second time, $200, and for the third and all subsequent, it's $500. And then, if they want to, they can choose to appeal the citation, which would trigger a hearing. So we have between no less than 25, no more than 45, I believe, days to set a hearing once they have sent us back that appeal letter. And so in that case, both parties would come and we'd adjudicate the hearing. I'm one of the hearing officers and I can tell you we've done this a few ways. Some where citations have been upheld, some where they've been dismissed, and some where we identified the person was guilty of having a noisy animal that was barking incessantly or intermittently, depending on what the time frame was, but we were able to work out a solution collectively with both parties and not uphold the fine and say, basically, if you could implement this solution and the problem doesn't happen again for a period of 6 months, then we will make this fine go away. And that's the idea, is bringing people together. The third option they have is to just not do anything when they receive the fine, in which case, after 30 days, it goes to collection.
Great, thank you.
I have just a couple of questions.
Sure.
Number one, do we call animal services if we see an animal hit by a car or on the side of the road? Who do we call?
It depends on the animal is generally the question. If it's the side of the road, generally, if it's a deceased animal, we'll certainly pick it up. And most of the time, even while wildlife is not in our jurisdiction, if there's alive but injured wildlife on the side of the road, the Department of Wildlife, they have I believe, one representative for a very large service area, and they're probably not going to make it out, so we'll go and assist them and get them in that case. If it's an animal that is, if it's a dog or cat, absolutely call us. I would say as a precautionary principle, if you see an animal in the public right away, give us a call.
Okay, so like we're now, it's skunk season, and we had a situation like that recently on my street. Would the wildlife office take care of that? Or?
No, that would be us. We will pick up the deceased wildlife. And it's a tricky thing because it's not something that we're mandated to do, but we've done it for so long, people have come to expect that service. So we provide it, and we realize it's a quality of life issue. Nobody wants to see the dead deer on their street for days on end, or even a dead skunk. So I would recommend calling us for that.
And squirrels as well?
Yeah, squirrels as well.
Okay, El Cerrito questions. El Cerrito.
Sure.
I appreciate that. So do we have any public comment?
There is one speaker, Cordell Hendler.
So good evening again, Mayor, Council. Thank you, Steve, for that presentation. So I kind of agree with Councilmember Lyman said. If I have one of my neighbors has this dog barking, I said, oh no, I would do exactly the same thing like he do. You know, fill out the form, and I just said I'd give it back to you, and then we'll just see how this lays out. And I said, when I saw the fines, I said 100 to 200. I said, okay, but subsequently, I said 500. I was like, I was at $500. That's a little bit steep. So I'm like, but that's the way it is. So, I just love this presentation. So that's it.
Okay. Anything else? Steve, thank you for being here, and thank you
so much, Mayor Quinto.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Next, we're going to do City Council local and regional liaison assignments. Anything? Janet?
Okay. I think there's only one thing I wanted, two. And partly it's that I don't remember the timing of all of this, but we all know, I think, that Janet Bilbus retired. So she's been replaced by Bridget Cooney. So if people are wondering who it is, that's the person's name. And I think I already mentioned the Senior Resource Fair. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was the Crime Prevention Committee. When I attempted to attend the meeting last week, I think it was, there wasn't a quorum. And the membership on that committee is excessively low. And so if anyone knows of anybody that might be interested in being a member of the Crime Prevention Committee, then they should get an application, and they can just also go to the meetings, which are, that's all available online on our website. And it is really reaching a real severely low point, for lack of a better way to say it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fidelli.
Yes. The two committees, the Financial Advisory Board, FAB, is presently working on El Cerrito financial policies and revamping the list of where we should be headed and what our policy should be on investment. The Human Relations Commission is planning its MLK 30th anniversary coming up with very exciting, some differences in what we've done in the past few years, and also discussing with staff some of the issues we heard today on rental and housing issues and draft ordinances in our commission. So that's
Okay, great. Councilmember Lyman.
Yeah, I represent El Cerrito at the Solid Waste Committee, Recycle More, and last month we continued our discussion on the Joint Powers Authority Agreement. The city managers, and I want to thank Mr. Hannon for his efforts, have continued to resolve many of the issues that the JEPA has raised. And it will be coming back to us probably in the December timeframe. Scott's not.
Scott.
Do you know when it's anticipated to come back to us, to the cities?
Supposed to be prior to that,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not on the, it's not, the next iteration of the JIPA is not on the October meeting, which is this coming Thursday. We will be doing doing the budgets, the preliminary budget hearings this Thursday. But I wanted to at least keep you posted that that is an outstanding action, is the JIPA that we're working on. The Recycle More was cited by the state California Integrated Waste Management Board for not doing some of the ordinances, AB 1826 and AB 363 or something to that effect. These are ordinances around businesses doing recycling. And the primary thing that Recycle More was cited for was not doing continuous outreach to the businesses to get participation from those businesses. El Cerrito, in this particular case, El Cerrito does operate independently from Recycle More, and El Cerrito numbers are fine, and El Cerrito is not in jeopardy of a finding, but Recycle More potentially is in jeopardy of a finding. It's considered a 120-day enforcement letter, so that 120 days allows them to correct within that time frame, and they're proceeding with corrective action. But as a member of Recycle More, we potentially do suffer the by association, essentially. And our staff is having to do more work and effort as to respond to the state, to make sure that the state knows that our numbers are fine, and to demonstrate that our participation in compliance with these laws is fine. So here's a situation where Recycle More is costing us staff time, additional increased staff time to demonstrate that we're in compliance. So that's just by way, that's to keep you informed of what Recycle More is doing and how they influence our staff's lives. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. After we adjourn here, we're going to continue our closed session talks upstairs, just for the council and with our city attorney, Sky. And so our next regularly scheduled city council meeting is on Tuesday, November 20th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Right here. So
Can I make one more
yes,
comment? Everybody please vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Oh, and to that end, they can drop off their votes here. And I should have said that while Sherry was still here.
Important election. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.